simultaneously crossing from Japanese anime to American comics. A powerful blow. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1. We all arrived a little early. The holy land of the pirate world, Mirajoa. In the dark dungeon, Chu Yang listened to the wailing coming from outside the cell, and his mood was particularly heavy. Less than a month after crossing into this world, Chu Yang, who had become a teenager, was abducted by human traffickers to the Sabaody archipelago, and then was chosen by the celestial dragons to become a slave. Damn, it's really unlucky. Others who cross over have attached systems, eat delicious food, drink spicy drinks, and he will soon leave the mark of Sky Dragon hoof on his body. This wave can be regarded as a specialty. The smell of burnt meat in the air made Chu Yang extremely nervous. Even though Chu Yang had been struggling in society for many years before crossing over, he still couldn't stay calm. In the cell next to Chu Yang, there were 3 girls of the same age as him. Compared with Chu Yang, they were much calmer and looked accustomed to it. The 3 sisters had completely different hair colors. The largest one had green hair, and the tall and slender one had brown hair. The girl with the smallest figure, but the strongest momentum, who looked like a big sister, had black hair. Boy, you are new here, right? Remember, if they take you out later, no matter what happens, you must hold back and don't scream, otherwise you will annoy those guys and your fate will be miserable. Among the 3 girls, the relatively petite black-haired girl looked serious. She reminded Chu Yang, and Chu Yang nodded and accepted her kindness. The girl's icy expression finally eased as the wailing outside gradually weakened. The originally gloomy and terrifying atmosphere eased a lot, and the girls began to chat with Chu Yang. Boy, what's your name? My name is Chu Yang. Can you please not call me boy? You don't look much older than me. Chu Yang? What a strange name. It's hard to pronounce. My name is Boa Hancock. You can call me Sister Hancock. Boy. Hancock emphasized the word boy again, as if to deliberately anger Chu Yang, but Chu Yang didn't want to argue with her about it. Hancock? Exclamation mark. Pirate Queen? Looking at the young empress who was still a slave in Mirajoa, Chu Yang understood the time node where he was at least 13 years before the plot officially began. The specific year depended on when the hero Fisher Tiger burned the Holy Land. With Mirajoa's defense, it would be harder for Chu Yang to escape from here than to ascend to heaven. Thinking of this, Chu Yang's face turned ugly. This feeling of being at the mercy of others and entrusting one's life and property to others was really uncomfortable. Chu Yang, who was about to get more information from Hancock, suddenly heard a sound of footsteps coming from far away. It was the jailer. They wanted to leave the mark of Sky Dragon hoof on Chu Yang. Hancock's face also changed, and he reminded again hurriedly, Chu Yang, you must hold on. Chu Yang forced a smile on his pale face. With a bang, the prison door was kicked open, and a tall and strong man walked out of the darkness. The man was wearing a black uniform, with his head covered by a black cloth, looking very much like an executioner in ancient Western times. Chu Yang took a deep breath, trying his best not to show a timid expression. Without saying a word, the jailer lifted Chu Yang up like a chicken, sneered and looked him up and down, and then took Chu Yang out of the cell. Hancock stared at their backs as they left. She didn't want this young man who had just arrived to have an accident. In recent years, many slaves have been tortured to death because of the whim of the jailer. Most of them were ordinary humans like Chu Yang. Because other races are more precious to the Cheyenne Lang people, if one is missing, the jailer will be severely punished. In panic, Chu Yang was hung up by a group of jailers. Next to him was a fire with sparks and a red-hot iron. The jailer picked up the iron and walked towards him with a ferocious face. Chu Yang stared at the other party like an endangered beast. At this moment, all fear was replaced by anger and hatred. I've seen a lot of eyes like yours, and their endings are not much better. The jailer sneered and raised the branding iron, pressing the hot iron hard on Chu Yang's chest. The burn was only a matter of a moment, and the pain that followed was indescribable. As the jailer continued to exert force, the branding iron collapsed in Chu Yang's chest. The pain made Chu Yang straighten his body and tremble all over. The will that came from nowhere prevented Chu Yang from shouting. He kept staring at the jailer, and his eyes gradually turned scarlet. The hysterical madness made the jailer panic. The branding iron in his hand loosened, and he subconsciously took a few steps back. When he came to his senses, he found that Chu Yang had fainted. I thought you were so tough, but you fainted so easily. While the jailer was mocking, Chu Yang's soul came to a mysterious palace. The palace was majestic, but if you look closely, you can see that there are many damaged and weathered places, and the heavy sense of history is overwhelming. There were many thrones standing deep in the palace. At a glance, they were densely packed. Most of the thrones were incomplete. Only the 12 thrones closest to Chu Yang were intact. The 2 thrones in the center were flashing with a terrifying red light, like blood spreading. A figure was sitting on one of the thrones. The figure seemed to have seen Chu Yang, and quickly stood up. In the hazy light, both of them saw each other's faces clearly. They were both stunned and then horrified. The 2 people looked exactly the same. The moment the 2 similar people looked at each other, a special feeling filled their bodies. The incomparable intimacy made them realize that they were the same person, both Chu Yang. Then, a memory that did not belong to them emerged in their minds. Obviously, this extra memory belonged to the other person. I didn't expect that there was another me who traveled to another world. Our souls seemed to have encountered some accidents when we traveled, and they were split into many parts. And this palace seems to be our common soul space. After sharing memories, the 2 Chu Yangs began to simply reason about the strange things that happened to them. Chu Yang from the pirate world looked at the other Chu Yang and exclaimed, "I didn't expect you to go to the Naruto world." Chu Yang from the Naruto world smiled bitterly and said, "It's just that the time I traveled through is terrible. I arrived many years early, and I temporarily lost the advantage of knowing the plot." Chu Yang from the pirate world also sighed and said, "Me too. I arrived 13 years early, and now I'm trapped in Mary Joa as a slave." "Then you're much more miserable than me. At least I didn't fall into slavery." Naruto Chu Yang teased, "It's just that I arrived more than 13 years early." Pirate Chu Yang asked curiously, "Then how many years early did you arrive?" Although they shared memories, it was obviously not a matter of a short time to sort them out completely. Naruto Chu Yang instantly became melancholy and said with tears in his eyes, "I don't know the exact time, but at this time, the ninja villages of various countries have not been established yet." Pirate Chu Yang immediately took a breath and exclaimed, "Wow, it's actually the Warring States period." Naruto Chu Yang said seriously, "In the Naruto world, I also have a name called Senju Yang. Please collect it. Please read. Chapter 2. I got the upper hand, but it was a bit early. The Senju clan. You've got a big leg to cling to." Pirate Chu Yang was very envious. He was the same person, but his fate was completely different. "Brother, this is the Warring States period, not the first year of the Hokage. We are almost fighting with the Uchiha clan next door. Do you know how dangerous it is?" Hokage Chu Yang spread his hands helplessly. "That's better than me." Pirate Chu Yang asked curiously, "Who is the current head of the Senju clan? Have you seen the first generation?" Hokage Chu Yang smiled proudly. "The first generation has just taken office, and he has accepted some young people in the clan as disciples, and taught them his own original wood escape. I'm one of them." Hearing this, the envy in Pirate Chu Yang's eyes was about to overflow, but he knew that wood escape was a blood limit, and the chance of learning it was very small. Wood escape is a fusion of 2 different chakra attributes, earth and water. It sounds simple, but it is actually very difficult to do. More importantly, the fusion of chakras of different attributes contains huge risks. If it fails, it will be horribly backfired. As members of the Senju clan, the similarity of genetic material will make them more able to avoid this kind of backlash. Hokage Chu Yang continued, "I'm the only one among this group of people who has learned wood release. Coincidentally, I just learned it, and my consciousness entered this palace. Can I see it?" Pirate Chu Yang looked at Hokage Chu Yang hopefully. Some of the blood limit ninjutsu do not require hand seals. Hokage Chu Yang just smiled and clapped his hands, and a special energy surged out of his body, and a large number of branches and vines spread out of his upper body. "How is it?" Hokage Chu Yang smiled proudly. "Awesome." Pirate Chu Yang was about to praise it, but suddenly felt that his body was also undergoing some inexplicable changes. He instinctively imitated the other party and put his hands together, and a shocking scene happened. A large number of branches also emerged from Pirate Chu Yang's body. He is using wood release. Hokage Chu Yang was stunned to see this scene. Hokage Chu Yang said in surprise, "You can use my power, so in return, I can also use your power." Pirate Chu Yang nodded. "It should be like this, but unfortunately I don't know anything now." "No." Hokage Chu Yang felt the changes in his body and became even more shocked. "My chakra is more active than usual, almost twice the difference." Pirate Chu Yang guessed, "The more people there are, the faster the strength will increase?" Hokage Chu Yang nodded excitedly. "It should be like this. If we find all of ourselves, wouldn't it be a step to heaven?" The two were still excitedly imagining the future, but suddenly a lot of fog appeared inside the palace. They felt that they had to leave here. "I don't know when we will see each other next time. You must improve your strength quickly," Hokage Chu Yang reminded earnestly. Chu Yang just nodded, and the next second his consciousness returned to his body. The severe pain made him sober. At this time, the jailer had just taken away the branding iron. Chu Yang had obviously stayed in the palace for a long time, but in the pirate world, it was just a moment. Seeing Chu Yang wake up not long after he fainted, the jailer sneered and raised the branding iron again. "You woke up pretty quickly, let's taste it again." The jailer didn't notice. The brand on Chu Yang's chest was healing rapidly, which was a self-healing ability that ordinary people could hardly achieve. The slow flow of chakra. Chu Yang's whole body was full of strength, and with a roar, Chu Yang broke free from the chains on his body. In the jailer's horrified eyes, Chu Yang grabbed his neck, and countless vines spread from Chu Yang's body, instantly wrapping around the jailer's body. Snap snap as the vines continued to tighten, a clear sound of bone cracking came from the jailer's body. "Power, power." The jailer looked at Chu Yang in disbelief. His face was full of regret, and he was no longer breathing after a while. "It's time to go." Killing their lackeys under the eyes of the celestial dragons is undoubtedly a serious provocation to the majesty of the celestial dragons. Chu Yang must not stay in Mary G's eyes any longer. Staying a little longer will increase the danger. But, if we just run away without a plan, the chance of success is too small. In order to protect the safety of the celestial dragons, the Holy Land has a Navy admiral stationed all year round. There are countless masters in the Navy base, and there is also a perverted organization like CP0. Chu Yang knew that with his current ability, he had no way to avoid the pursuit of these people. "We have to make some noise and cause the greatest chaos." Chu Yang suddenly remembered Fisher Tiger's feat of burning the Holy Land, and he was ready to imitate it. After walking out of the dim torture room, Chu Yang ran back all the way with his memory until he was close to the slave's cell, and then he stopped. The three sisters saw that Chu Yang was safe and sound, and they looked at him with surprise at first, and then they were immediately overwhelmed by panic. Chu Yang was not brought back by the jailer, but came back on his own. There is only one explanation for this situation. The second oldest, Sanda Sonaya, shouted in horror, Are you saying that the jailer was?" Chu Yang nodded. The third oldest, Marigorod, was trembling with fear. "They have been trapped here for several years. Although they often have the idea of killing the jailer, they never dare to do it." On the other side, Hancock, as the eldest sister, was also looking at the boy in front of her in shock. From the first moment she saw the boy, she felt that he was a little different, but she never expected that Chu Yang would dare to do such a shocking thing. Although she was afraid, Hancock felt incomparably happy in her heart because Chu Yang did what she had always wanted to do, but dared not do. Hancock hurriedly reminded Chu Yang, "While no one has discovered you yet, you should escape quickly. If you are caught by the celestial dragons, your fate will be worse than death." Chu Yang nodded and said, "I know, but before I leave, I have to save everyone." "What?" Sanda Sonaya and Marigorod exclaimed at the same time. They didn't expect that at such a critical moment, Chu Yang could still think of the other people in the dungeon. "Don't be a hero. You don't know how many slaves are imprisoned here. How long will it take for you to save them one by one?" Although Hancock was very moved, she still shouted at Chu Yang loudly, hoping that he would leave quickly. The celestial dragons have ruled for so many years, and there has never been such a terrible incident. Chu Yang's fate is imaginable. However, She didn't know that Chu Yang saved people just to distract the Navy and give himself a greater chance to escape from Mary G's eyes. Chu Yang had no intention of leaving. He squatted down under the puzzled eyes of the three sisters and pressed his hands to the ground. Chapter 3 Burning the Holy Land. What is he doing? Mary Gord was confused. Hancock and Sanderson were also confused, and they stared at Chu Yang blankly. The uneven dungeon slabs suddenly cracked, and in the cracks, trees and vines grew wildly, flooding the dungeon like a tide. The prison door, which was usually indestructible, was more fragile than tofu at this time, and was crushed by the trees in a few seconds. The sudden change made the three sisters dumbfounded. They stood there and dared not move, thinking that some monster had appeared in the dungeon. Under Chu Yang's control, the trees left a path for people to enter and exit. He stood outside the prison door and shouted, "Come out quickly." Hancock, who had come to his senses, came out of the lush woods and asked in doubt, "Are you a devil fruit user? There is no time to talk about this now." Chu Yang avoided answering and said, "Take everyone away quickly." "Thank you." Hancock looked at Chu Yang deeply, as if to engrave Chu Yang's appearance in her mind, and then left with her two sisters. Chu Yang used wood release to destroy all the prison doors in a short time. The long detained slaves rushed out and fled to the outside of the dungeon. The huge group of people formed a black wave, which was extremely terrifying from a distance, and this was the effect Chu Yang wanted. As the last person escaped from the dungeon, Chu Yang set this place full of sin on fire. With a large number of trees as fuel, the fire spread very quickly. Chu Yang took advantage of the night to light fires all the way and used wood release to lead the fire to all parts of Mary G's eyes. However, what Chu Yang didn't know was, in another part of the city, there was a person doing the same thing. In the dark night, the tall figure looked particularly burly under the light of the fire. The red skin and appearance that were different from ordinary people indicated that the other party's identity was not an ordinary human. Fisher Tiger. Tiger, who always advocated freedom, dreamed of becoming a traveler, but not long after starting his journey, Tiger was caught by human traffickers and became a slave. For 3 whole years, Tiger was subjected to inhuman abuse and witnessed the greed and evil deep in human nature, which made him extremely disappointed in humans. But compared to hatred, Tiger wanted to liberate other races who had the same experience as himself. That's why he returned again after successfully escaping from the Holy Land. Tiger wanted to liberate all the slaves here. Tiger, who had great ideals, had just released some slaves and set the cages on fire, and then he found that the other side of the city was already on fire. Who was it? One step faster than me. Looking at the increasingly out of control fire, Tiger realized that if he didn't hurry up to rescue the slaves, everyone would be burned to death. Who the hell set the fire? Tiger was chased around by the flames and cursed in exasperation. Fortunately, when he was a slave before, Tiger had a clear understanding of the layout of the Holy Land. Although time was tight, he still rescued most of the slaves. The remaining slaves also took advantage of the riots to escape on their own. Tiger, who had achieved his goal, was about to escape from the Holy Land. A team of Navy officers came over from a distance and surrounded Tiger. "How dare you let so many slaves go?" the colonel in a Navy coat roared angrily. Tiger said righteously, "They were innocent people who were trafficked to the Holy Land by human traffickers. As a Navy officer, you not only did not protect the weak, but also helped the evil. It's a shame." The Navy colonel sneered, "I don't want to waste time talking to you. Compared with letting the slaves go, you are more guilty of burning the Holy Land. One person is dead, so surrender." Tiger was stunned for a moment and said angrily, "I didn't set the fire. You are still quibbling when you are about to die. Since you don't intend to surrender, don't blame me for being tough." The Navy colonel ignored Tiger's excuses and ordered his men to attack. In an instant, a group of people surrounded him and fired dozens of muskets at Tiger at the same time. Tiger calmly performed the fishman karate. The air was caught in Tiger's hand and turned into a violent airflow. With his strong swing, it instantly vibrated in all directions. Countless bullets were hit by the airflow and were about to fall apart. Like raindrops, they dripped on the ground. The Navy colonel's face was not good. Tiger's skills were beyond his expectations. The Navy colonel said coldly, "You dare to sneak into the Holy Land alone to set fire? You are not an ordinary fishman." Seeing that the other party was so sure, Tiger was too lazy to explain. He came here to liberate slaves, and now it was not much different. The long-range attack did not work, and the colonel asked the soldiers to start a hand-to-hand fight. As a fishman, Tiger's body function is 10 times that of a normal human. He knew that these soldiers could not take down Tiger, but that didn't matter. As long as he delayed for a while, there would naturally be a strong man from the Navy to deal with this guy. The colonel just wanted to get a share of the pie, and he didn't intend to fight Tiger. On the other side, Tiger saw that the other party's main general had not moved for a long time, and only sent some small fish to deal with him, and he immediately understood his idea. Quick battle, quick decision. Tiger tried to break out in one go, but he was always trapped in the human wave tactics, like 2 feet stepped into the mud, unable to move. The naval colonel stood outside the crowd and smiled triumphantly. "Don't make unnecessary resistance, it's good for everyone." Tiger's face was not good. The longer time passed, the more intense the fire became, which meant that a powerful naval general was about to arrive. "If I want to go back and continue to be a slave, I might as well die here." Tiger gritted his teeth and stared at the Navy. Even if he died, he had to drag a few people down with him, especially the leading naval colonel. Just as Tiger was preparing to fight to the death, the ground under his feet began to tremble violently. I saw a row of rough trees rising from the ground, overturning the Navy camp in an instant, and countless soldiers flew up. The colonel, surrounded by trees, shouted in panic, "What the hell is this?" The next second, he was submerged by the sea of trees. This sudden scene was really terrifying, and Tiger had to stare at these weird trees in a serious state. "Why don't you leave? Why are you staying here?" At this time, a human boy came out of the woods, glanced at Tiger, and hurriedly left from the other side. Tiger was stunned for a moment, then followed the boy, shuttling between the trees. At the same time, the 5 elders of the world government were furious. It's outrageous that someone dared to kill and burn in Mirajoa, simply trampling on the dignity of the celestial dragons. Who is this daring guy? Have you found out? According to the patrol team's report, it seems that a guy from the Fishman tribe is taking the opportunity to release slaves. Damn the Fishman tribe, they have become more and more arrogant in recent years. Where is Sakaski? Let him come quickly and catch these slave criminals. The city is full of fires. Wouldn't it be troublesome to ask Sakaski to come? It's better to let Aokiji come and deal with it. Chapter 4. Escape from the Holy Land and think about the future. The fire that Chu Yang created with the help of a large amount of combustibles far exceeded the original fire in the plot. Now the whole of Mary Gi's was engulfed in flames. The situation was so serious that the celestial dragons did not care about chasing Tiger. Even Aokiji, who had just arrived, joined the firefighting team at the first time. Coupled with the slaves who fled everywhere, the army of the Holy Land was overwhelmed. In the top floor courtyard at the highest point of Pangu City, a lonely figure was quietly looking at the flames burning everywhere in the city. As the real master of the Holy Land, Yamu did not feel ashamed, but a playful smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. After obtaining the most supreme power in the world, she rarely encountered such interesting things in her long life. Especially in the last 100 years, she was so bored that she lost interest in everything. Today, it was a good fun. Yamu was like a bystander who had nothing to do with it, watching the development of things with interest. As for how many slaves would escape, and how many baileys would be lost, she didn't care at all. While Yamu was enjoying the spectacular bonfire, Chu Yang and Tiger had already escaped from the Holy Land and arrived at the edge of the Red Earth continent. Chu Yang did not expect that this fishman would follow him all the time. He helped him only because the Navy was blocking his escape route. Chu Yang had no choice but to take action. The previous attack almost consumed all of Chu Yang's chakra. If it were not for the blessing of wood release, his current amazing recovery ability would have probably fainted long ago. On the way, Tiger was also constantly looking at Chu Yang. The ability Chu Yang showed before made Tiger suspect that he was a devil fruit ability user. As for what ability it was, Tiger was curious, but he was not stupid enough to dig deep. The relationship between the other party and himself was not close enough to exchange secrets. The two walked to the edge of the cliff. Chu Yang looked at the steep mountain wall thousands of feet high below, and the raging waves at the bottom, and subconsciously swallowed his saliva. He was not afraid of heights, but such a scary height would make even a normal person weak at a glance. I remember there was a lift. Chu Yang looked around. He remembered that there was a special lift to pick up people going to the Red Earth continent. There are a lot of soldiers guarding the lift, but now these soldiers are busy fighting fires in the city. There should be no one guarding it. As long as we find the lift, we can leave Mary Gi smoothly. When Tiger heard that Chu Yang was looking for a lift, he immediately said, "I know where it is." Chu Yang looked at him in surprise. Isn't this the fisherman slave who just escaped from prison? How could he know this? Seeing that Chu Yang didn't seem to believe him, Tiger explained, "I saw the lift when I climbed up from the bottom before." "I see." Chu Yang nodded and was immediately startled. "Wait, where did you climb up from?" Tiger pointed to the abyss beside him. Now Chu Yang finally knew who the fisherman in front of him was. For so many years, there has only been one person who can climb to the holy land of Mary Gi's with his bare hands, and that is a hero who liberated the slaves, Fisher Tiger. After knowing Tiger's identity, Chu Yang couldn't help but look him up and down, and then he found that he looked very familiar, especially the red skin. Tiger's scalp was numb under Chu Yang's passionate gaze, and he said quickly, "Little brother, don't worry, I definitely didn't lie to you." "I know." Chu Yang asked curiously, "Are you here to set the fire as well?" Tiger, who had been misunderstood once, couldn't stand this grievance, and immediately explained, "I didn't set the fire, I just rescued some slaves." As he was talking, Tiger felt something was wrong, and asked in confusion, "Huh? Why did you sail so?" Chu Yang's face changed, and he hurriedly changed the subject. "There is no time to chat now. If we stay any longer, the Navy will catch up. Take me to find the lift." "Oh, right. Tiger recovered and took Chu Yang all the way along the cliff to the front. After a while, the two successfully found the entrance and exit of the lift. Just as Chu Yang expected, there were very few soldiers guarding the entrance. There were only 4 people standing alone. They were knocked down by Tiger's punch one by one, without any chance to fight back. Tiger couldn't help but sigh. The defense here is so weak, and other places should be similar. I hope that group of innocent civilians can leave this hell and go home smoothly. He is really a kind person who cares about the world. Chu Yang, who likes to keep to himself, admires Tiger very much. This idea is also from the heart. There is no ridicule. Taking advantage of the night, the two took the lift to leave the Red Earth continent and return to the embrace of the sea. There is a small town right below Mary Gi's as the landing point of the lift. People traveling to and from the Red Earth continent usually gather in this town. Because there were no guards, Chu Yang and Tiger's arrival did not alarm anyone. Walking on the quiet street, Tiger suddenly asked, "Little brother, are you going to go home?" "Go home? Where does the time traveler get a home?" Chu Yang smiled bitterly and said, "My home is gone. I can't go back." Tiger thought Chu Yang's family was destroyed by the traffickers, and felt very sympathetic to his plight for a while, and then asked, "Where are you going next?" "Yes, where am I going next?" Chu Yang fell into deep thought. "I have to find a place to learn some useful skills. Whether it is haki or taijutsu, Chu Yang needs to learn something as soon as possible. Otherwise the next time he meets other clones, he will waste another opportunity to meet. Although freeloading makes people happy, it is meaningless to freeload on yourself. What should I learn?" In Chu Yang's opinion, the most valuable skill in the pirate world is undoubtedly haki. There is no doubt that haki is powerful, and it can enhance combat power to a certain extent, even better than the devil fruit. And haki does not have obvious shortcomings like the devil fruit. But the question is where to find someone to teach me haki? Although there are many strong people who know haki in the new world, with Chu Yang's current ability, even with wood release, he is likely to be killed. As for the new world, the only place Chu Yang can visit is the Amazon Lily Kingdom where Hancock is. There is a ban on men there. Chu Yang, who does not have the aura of a protagonist, will die if he enters, at least for now. In addition to domineering, the next best thing is swordsmanship and physical skills. At this stage, the only place where you can learn superior swordsmanship is Aishin Dojo in Shimotsuki village in the East China Sea, which means being a fellow apprentice with Zoro. It is not realistic for Chu Yang to return to the East China Sea from the Grand Line alone. As for physical skills, Chu Yang really has nothing to look up to, except for the 6 styles of the Navy. The overall level of physical skills in the pirate world is not as good as that in the Naruto world. Chapter 5, Jinbei, the Mere Four Emperors. Chu Yang, who was thinking about the future, seemed a little dazed. In Tiger's eyes, Chu Yang was confused all over. Tiger patted Chu Yang's shoulder and comforted him. Why don't you leave with me first, and then make plans later? Chu Yang asked in surprise. Where to go? Fishman Island? Do you think I can go back to Fishman Island? Tiger smiled bitterly. After tonight, I'm afraid I will be wanted by the Navy all over the world. In this case, if I go back to Fishman Island, it will bring unpredictable disasters to Fishman Island. Chu Yang sighed and said, that's right. Tiger asked, are you willing to go to sea with me? The Sun Pirates? Chu Yang's mind moved, thinking that he had nowhere to go at the moment, so he agreed to Tiger's invitation. Then the two of them sneaked to the port and prepared to get a pirate ship to go to sea. In fact, there are crew members on each ship. However, at this time, they are all resting in the cabin because there are only 2 people. Considering that Chu Yang has no sailing experience, Tiger plans to get a small 3GUI sailboat for easy driving. Chu Yang and Tiger had no psychological burden in robbing pirate ships. They just regarded it as robbing the rich to help the poor, even though they were helping themselves. After locking the target, Tiger and Chu Yang were ready to take action. There were not many pirates on a small 3-masted sailing ship, and they were no match for them. After dealing with these minions, Tiger was ready to drive the pirate ship away, but he heard a familiar voice. Brother Tiger, I've been waiting for you for a long time. What are you doing? Chu Yang and Tiger turned around. They saw a large group of fishermen standing on the coast, led by a sturdy blue fat man. He looks familiar. Isn't this Jinbei, the Mere Four Emperors? Tiger's expression was serious. In order not to implicate his companions, he chose to go to the Holy Land alone, but he didn't expect them to follow him. Looking at the raging fire reflected above the Red Earth continent, Jinbei guessed that Tiger had succeeded, so he said, I can't stop you from rescuing those slaves, but you can't stop us either. Jinbei. Tiger was very angry, but he was helpless. He knew Jinbei was a very loyal guy. Brother Tiger, although we can't help you, we can leave with you. Jinbei's eyes revealed a deep light, like the sea. Yes, Brother Tiger, even if the Navy wants to hunt you down, you have to get through us first. I've long disliked those humans. I'll take care of them one by one. The other fishermen also started to make a fuss. Tiger was moved and felt that he couldn't beat this group of people, so he could only agree to let them join him and go sailing together. Sorry little brother, I'm afraid you have to bring more people to go to sea with us. Tiger was a little sorry because he knew that except for himself, other fishermen would not like the boy in front of them. The fishermen only noticed Chu Yang at this time, and everyone's expression suddenly became gloomy. Jinbei was lucky, although he didn't have a good impression of humans, but at least he would not take the initiative to show malice. At this time, a tall fisherman stood out from the crowd. Staring at Chu Yang with cold eyes, he asked, Brother Tiger, who is this boy? Tiger stood in front of Chu Yang and said in a deep voice, Arun, he escaped from Mary Gi's with me and saved me once. Saved Brother Tiger? Arun, who was still very young at this time, did not reduce his hostility towards Chu Yang. He looked unfriendly. Brother, you are not really going to take this human child to the sea with us, are you? Who knows if he will betray us in the future? As soon as this was said, the remaining fish people responded, and their words were full of dissatisfaction with Chu Yang's human identity. Chu Yang, who had experienced a near-death experience, had already changed his mentality. Facing this naked hostility, he looked at these guys coldly. He could kill the jailer, so he could naturally kill these guys. Shut up. Tiger rarely got angry at his companions and said, do you want me to be like those humans and do something ungrateful? He yelled, and the fishermen headed by Arlong were silent, but Arlong still glared at Chu Yang fiercely. Do you think you can manipulate me just because I'm young? Chu Yang laughed. It seemed that, if he wanted to gain a foothold in the Sun Pirates, he had to show Arlong a little power first. Seeing that the atmosphere became awkward, Jinbei stepped out to smooth things over. Brother Tiger, they have all been persecuted by humans to some extent, and they are more vigilant. I hope you can understand. Tiger sighed. Of course he understood. Even his own good impression of humans had disappeared. If Chu Yang hadn't really helped him, he would probably have just sat back and watched. Then, Chu Yang boarded the huge pirate ship with the fishmen in a weird atmosphere. This was prepared before Jinbei came. Tiger personally raised the legendary flag of the Sun Pirates. The pirate flag fluttered in the wind in the dark night. The ship slowly left the port and sailed towards the boundless sea. Standing on the deck, Tiger smiled and asked Chu Yang's name for the first time. My name is Chu Yang. The boy's clear and confident voice echoed. A very special name. Tiger felt a little awkward, but still remembered Chu Yang's name. After blowing the wind on the deck for a while, Chu Yang planned to rest, but Aaron suddenly volunteered to take Chu Yang to find his room. Aaron's sudden enthusiasm made Tiger think that his relationship with Chu Yang had eased, so he readily agreed. Chu Yang had a sneer on his face and did not expose Aaron's little thoughts. It just so happened that he also wanted to talk with the other party. Aaron took Chu Yang into the cabin and went down all the way. He soon bypassed the living area and went straight to the storage warehouse on the bottom floor. Standing outside the warehouse, Aaron suddenly stopped, turned around and looked at Chu Yang with an indifferent face, sneering. Human child, you don't really think I'm taking you to rest, do you? Aaron thought he would see Chu Yang's panicked expression, but he only saw a playful look on Chu Yang's face. The young Aaron was not yet the new boss of Kakoja village in the future. Even if he was, he would never be Chu Yang's opponent. Aaron, who failed to get what he wanted, had a ferocious expression and roared, "Boy, you'd better get off the boat while I'm talking to you nicely." Shut up. Chu Yang raised his right hand, and a large number of tree vines extended from his right arm, constantly expanding, and instantly wrapped Aaron, making him unable to move. The trees kept squeezing Aaron's body, and the tight sense of restraint made Aaron feel suffocated. He looked at Chu Yang in horror. Are you a capable person? Chu Yang did not answer him, but continued to increase the pressure until Aaron's mouth and nose began to bleed continuously. The internal organs were greatly damaged. Aaron's expression of agony made Chu Yang very excited, and he showed a very pure smile. Aaron was horrified when he saw this scene. Please read it. Please recommend it. Please add it to your collection. Please don't support the book. It will be updated 4K a day for the time being, and it will be updated more when it is recommended. Thank you. Guarantee the quality. The character is complete. Chapter 6 Fishman Karate. Aaron looked at Chu Yang, whose eyes were red, and wanted to say something to beg for mercy, but the fear of death made him speechless. Aaron opened his mouth and trembled. Chu Yang looked at the blood that kept flowing out of Aaron, and suddenly recalled the pain when the Cheyenne Lang people's branding iron pressed hard on his chest. The anger of being slaughtered by others because of weakness ignited the murderous intention in Chu Yang's heart. He would never let others trample on him again. What do you want to do? Aaron, who was about to faint, was stimulated by the coldness of Chu Yang, and his consciousness suddenly became clear. If you kill me, you can't stay on the ship. Brother Tiger will not allow people who kill their companions to stay. Aaron shouted hysterically, trying to wake up Chu Yang's reason. Just now, Chu Yang said coldly, if I don't agree to you, will you let me go? Will you let an ordinary human go? Aaron was speechless. As Chu Yang thought, he had no intention of letting Chu Yang go. Even if he didn't kill him, he would throw him into the sea and let him fend for himself. Afterwards, Aaron just had to lie that Chu Yang had left by himself. Although he might not be able to fool Tiger, Tiger could not do anything to him. Aaron was sure that Tiger would not turn against his people for one person. You are essentially the same as those humans you hate. Chu Yang sneered, gave up the idea of killing Aaron, and began to loosen the trees and vines that bound him. It's not that Chu Yang was soft-hearted. If he killed Aaron here, Chu Yang really couldn't stay on the ship. More importantly, someone came. The sturdy blue fat man stood behind Chu Yang, his hands covered with armed color domineering pressed on Chu Yang's shoulders, ready to save Aaron at any time. Chu Yang released the would escape, turned around and looked at Jinbei, and asked calmly, "When did you come?" Jinbei glanced at Aaron, who was covered in blood, and his eyes flashed with shock. He tried to lower his voice, to make himself appear calmer. "When Aaron said he wanted to take you to rest, I felt something was wrong. That's not like his style. Just in case, I've been following you." Jinbei smiled bitterly. "I was afraid he would do something stupid. Facts have proved that my guess was right. I just didn't expect." Chu Yang let out a breath, as if he wanted to get rid of all the anger in his heart. "Didn't expect that I almost killed him?" Jinbei nodded and said in a tone of understanding, "No wonder Brother Tiger said you saved him. It turns out you are a person with special abilities." Frequent use of wood release has depleted Chu Yang's chakra. He is now very tired, with drooping eyelids. He said weakly, "If you don't plan to kick me off the boat, then take me to rest. Now I just want to lie on the bed and have a good sleep." Before leaving the storage room on the bottom floor, Jinbei looked helplessly at Aaron, who was seriously injured and unconscious, leaning against the door, and sighed with a complicated expression. Aelong's hatred for humans is more serious than most of the fishmen on the ship. If he doesn't correct his thoughts in time, he may suffer a great loss at the hands of Chu Yang in the future. Out of care for Chu Yang, Jinbei specially took him to a single room and then left quietly. After arranging Chu Yang, Jinbei hurriedly asked the ship's doctor to treat Aelong. Later, the news that Aelong was seriously injured and unconscious by Chu Yang spread like wildfire. At first, Jinbei thought about covering up for Aelong, but Jinbei later gave up the idea, because there were many fishmen on the ship who had the same idea as Aelong. In order to prevent these people from doing stupid things, the necessary deterrence was indispensable. In this way, Jinbei thought it would be better to spread the news. Chu Yang, who fell asleep on the bed, didn't know that, because of this incident, Aelong had become a laughingstock on the whole ship. The next day, Chu Yang, who slept until noon, appeared on the deck under the scorching sun. He found that the way the fisherman looked at him was obviously different from yesterday. The disgust was much less, replaced by surprise and panic. There was a very obvious sense of distance between the two sides. It seems that they already know. Chu Yang looked around, his mouth slightly raised. From then on, the noise in his ears could finally be less. Chu Yang had no intention of getting along with this group of fishmen. The Sun Pirates were just a temporary place for him to stay. "It was my responsibility for what happened yesterday." Tiger came over from the bow and apologized to Chu Yang with a tired face. "It's not me who was injured. There's no need to apologize." Chu Yang replied lightly, "It's the guy named Aelong who probably won't be able to get out of bed for 10 days or half a month. That's good, so he won't always make trouble." Tiger looked like he had a headache. Although he was a fishman, he didn't like Aelong's irritable and radical way of doing things. "If you need anything, tell me anytime." Although the Sun Pirates had been announced, Tiger obviously didn't regard Chu Yang as a member of the pirate ship, and was very polite. They were partners who had walked together for a part of their respective journeys, and they couldn't walk hand in hand to the end. Both of them had a tacit understanding about this. Chu Yang thought for a while, then said, "I want to learn some fighting skills from Jinbei. Can you let him teach me?" "Jinbei?" Tiger was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "Of course, you have a good eye. That boy's strength and potential are extraordinary. In a few years, I think he can become the best among the fishmen." Chu Yang smiled. "Nonsense. That's Jinbei, who is just one of the 4 emperors. The title of the 7 warlords of the sea is not given for nothing." Chu Yang wants to learn not only fishman karate from Jinbei, but also, more importantly, domineering. He had seen his armed color domineering yesterday. Not long after, Tiger found Jinbei and told him that Chu Yang wanted to learn fighting from him. At this time, Jinbei still had a deep wariness of humans, but because Chu Yang had done a favor to Tiger, he treated him specially. Jinbei reluctantly agreed to Chu Yang's request. Jinbei began to train Chu Yang in hell that day. It is not known whether Jinbei has a certain revenge mentality or just wants to finish this mission as soon as possible. His teaching method is quite rough and wild. Almost every time after the training, Chu Yang was carried into the room. Despite the tragedy, Chu Yang only took 3 days to complete the introduction of Fishman Karate, and his proficiency rose like a rocket. The speed of progress was incredible to Jinbei. In Jinbei's opinion, Chu Yang's learning speed of Fishman Karate surpassed most of the fishmen. But Chu Yang is an out-and-out human. If he didn't know, that Tiger would definitely not allow it. Jinbei really wanted to cut Chu Yang open to see if there were any fishman organs growing inside. It's really a ghost. Jinbei, who didn't believe in evil, continued to intensify the torture of Chu Yang, but Chu Yang was now like a sponge with no upper limit, madly absorbing everything that was beneficial to him. Chapter 7. Battle with Jinbei. After superimposing the talent, potential, and strength of the Hokage Chu Yang was far superior to ordinary people in everything he learned. In just 4 days, Chu Yang's proficiency in Fishman Karate rose to a new level. Jinbei decided to inspect Chu Yang's training results. The two had a unique Fishman Karate match on the deck. In addition to Fishman Karate, neither side could use other skills. At first, the fishermen on the ship thought Jinbei was joking. How could a human who had only been on the ship for a week learn Fishman Karate so quickly? It's impossible to learn it from the womb. With a skeptical attitude, all members of the Sun Pirates witnessed the match between Chu Yang and Jinbei. Even Ah Long was not absent. He stood on the sidelines with his upper body wrapped in bandages. His eyes never left Chu Yang. You attack first. Jinbei stood in front of Chu Yang without even a defensive posture. Okay. Chu Yang, who was always neat and tidy, did not refuse. He clenched his fist in his abdomen and shrank his body slightly, like a spring tightening. Chu Yang accumulated strength in his fist, then swung it out with force, and the force of his fist formed a strong shock wave in the air. Fishman Karate Vacuum Watery Fist. This is a move that Chu Yang improved by referring to Jinbei's Karakusa Watery Fist. The distance is farther and the power is more concentrated. Because of the wood release, Chu Yang's cell activity is also increasing day by day. The power of this punch is no less than Jinbei's original move, and it is even more powerful. And Jinbei has not realized the power of this punch until the cannon-like shock wave approaches him. Jinbei only felt a terrifying pressure. Same watery fist. Jinbei's thick and powerful blue arm bulged with terrifying muscles, and he punched the air in front of him fiercely. With a bang, the air seemed to be torn into countless air currents by brute force, surging wildly in all directions, directly overturning the fishermen in the audience around. Aaron looked at the two men who had only exchanged one move in horror. The battle was bigger than he had imagined. This guy actually learned Fishman Karate? And he's as good as brother Jinbei. Does this guy have fishman blood? The fishermen were talking about it, looking at Chu Yang in surprise. Tiger opened his mouth wide, not knowing how to express his current mood. Well done, kid. Jinbei smiled at Chu Yang for the first time, putting away his contemptuous attitude just now. In that case, I'm going to fight you seriously too. Chu Yang smiled, his pupils glowing with excitement, with a hint of the bloodthirsty fanaticism from before. Aaron saw this and shuddered suddenly, his heart chilled. The two sides started fighting again, giving up the meaningless probing and going straight to the simplest and crudest close combat. Fist to flesh. However, Chu Yang, as a human, was very different in size from Jinbei, making it hard to believe that he could stand firm under Jinbei's fierce attack. Chu Yang, a young man, was only a hair taller than Jinbei's waist, and his thighs were not as thick as his arms. The two fists collided, like two matches hitting two logs that several people could hold together. The visual contrast made this competition look particularly shocking in the eyes of everyone. Tiger was afraid that Chu Yang's small body would be broken by Jinbei in the next second. Indeed, every fight made Chu Yang feel that his body was about to fall apart. The power from Jinbei's fist was like an invisible wave hitting every muscle and bone in his body. A normal person would have been unable to hold on. But Chu Yang's self-healing ability was unimaginably strong, giving him the capital to stand firm. In addition, Jinbei did not use his domineering power, so everything was within Chu Yang's tolerance. The battle between Chu Yang and Jinbei lasted from noon to sunset, and then it ended when the stars came out. Jinbei was out of strength. He simply lay on the deck, gasping for breath. His body was covered in bruises, and it was horrible to look at. Chu Yang on the other side also looked miserable with bruised face and nose. But Chu Yang was better than him in one aspect, that is, Chu Yang was still standing. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Chu Yang, who had only studied fisherman karate for a week, actually fought a tie with Jinbei without using wood release. The result shocked everyone. In just 1 week, Chu Yang really went from a novice who knew nothing about physical skills to an elite in fisherman karate. Tiger stared at Chu Yang blankly, as if he was looking at a monster of unknown identity. Tiger, who had seen Chu Yang's ability in Mirajoa, never thought that the other party would be an ordinary boy, but Chu Yang's talent still shocked him. Jinbei said speechlessly, "Boy, you are really tough." Chu Yang grinned and said, "You are not as tough as I thought." Ha ha ha. Jinbei laughed loudly. "I lose this time. We will fight again next time, but I will not hold back next time." Chu Yang said unhappily, "If you want to use haki, I can't beat you, so forget it." Jinbei replied, "You can also use the power of the devil fruit." Chu Yang still shook his head and said, "I can't beat you. I can't beat you." Jinbei suddenly had a headache and then thought of a compromise. "How about this? I will teach you haki, and we will have another match with haki in the future." Chu Yang showed a satisfied smile and then slowly collapsed on the ground. He really couldn't hold on until now. From today on, no gossip about Chu Yang will be heard in the Sun Pirates. No one dared to look at Chu Yang with discrimination and hatred. No matter where Chu Yang went, he could feel the respectful eyes of others. This is respect for the strong. Only Alan dared to be angry, but not to speak. Even if he passed by Chu Yang, he would lower his head and quickly walk past Chu Yang. 2 days after the competition, Chu Yang found Jinbei again with great interest to learn haki from him. He really liked this state of learning everything twice as fast as others. He was significantly improving his strength every moment. It was addictive and could not extricate himself. What a monster. Jinbei, whose body was still covered with bruises, could not help but sigh when he saw Chu Yang, who had recovered as usual. "Tell me honestly, are you really a human? Aren't you talking nonsense?" Chu Yang rolled his eyes and asked back, "Where on my body do I look like a human?" Jinbei was amazed and shook his head. "Nowhere do I look like a human. Don't beat around the bush." Chu Yang laughed angrily. "Hurry up and teach me haki." Jinbei had no choice but to honestly explain the power of haki to Chu Yang. At the same time, Tiger, who was sitting in the captain's room, looked very unhappy. In his hand was a newspaper and a bounty order that had been delivered by the newsbird this morning. The bounty order was for him, and the bounty was as high as 500 million baileys. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8. I'm from the magical world. Tiger's bounty is much higher than the 230 million baileys in the original plot. It can be seen how ruthless Chu Yang's fire was. The Navy has not yet sent people to encircle and suppress the Sun Pirates, all because the loss of Mirajoa was too heavy, and all the manpower was immediately invested in post-disaster reconstruction. This is also a blessing in disguise, giving Chu Yang time to grow and enable him to protect his own safety. Time passed in a flash. Almost a month later, the Navy's pursuit came, and Chu Yang successfully learned the armament haki with the help of Jinbei. On the sea of the New World, the Sun Pirates were surrounded by 5 warships. The opponent was fierce, and the crew knew that they would have to fight a tough battle today. Everyone, including Arlong, did not show the slightest fear. They were really ready to fight the Navy to the death. No fisherman would allow their spiritual leader Fisher Tiger to be captured by the Navy. As the battle was imminent, Tiger suddenly walked up to Chu Yang and said, "I didn't expect that I would leave you here and cause you trouble. If there is any problem later, just take the boat and leave. Except for you, all the people on this ship are fishermen. They don't need a boat to escape." Chu Yang glanced at Tiger and didn't agree. If the situation is not good, he will of course leave, but he will definitely kill a lot before leaving. There is no way to seek revenge on the celestial dragons for the time being, so he won't delay him from venting his anger on the Navy. Jinbei next to him said, "Brother Tiger, we will never abandon you and escape by ourselves." Tiger looked around, and everyone had the same attitude as Jinbei. Seeing that persuasion was fruitless, he could only concentrate on commanding the crew to fight. The Navy has an advantage over 90% of the pirates in terms of artillery fire, and it is an overwhelming advantage. Therefore, before the boarding battle, artillery coverage is generally a must. The 5 warships completely surrounded the 5 directions of the Sun pirates, and then fired artillery at the same time, but the roar was deafening. Pay attention to defend against the shells, or our ship will be finished. Jinbei roared, jumped into the sea, and performed fishman jutsu in the sea, grabbing the sea current with both hands, just like grabbing a real object. Jinbei pulled hard, and the sea current kept spinning, forming a thick water tornado. With Jinbei's shoulder throw, the water tornado was directly ejected, forming a violently surging water curtain on the side of the ship, blocking a large number of shells. The other side of the ship was not so lucky. It was empty and there was no protection at all. Some radical fishermen even wanted to use their bodies to block the shells to ensure the safety of the mast. At the critical moment, Chu Yang appeared here, clapped his hands, and began to make seals. During this period, he was not only learning domineering, but also extracting chakra every day to practice wood escape. Chu Yang is no longer a rookie who just escaped from the Holy Land. Now he can also perform some difficult ninjutsu. Chu Yang activated the wood escape, and giant shields made of trees and vines quickly grew on both sides of the deck, covering most of the hull. Wood release, tree wall. The shells rained down on the wooden shield. Sparks flew everywhere, but surprisingly, the wooden shield was surprisingly hard, and it withstood the bombardment of the shells, leaving only a few tiny cracks. I underestimated the power of wood release. Seeing this, Chu Yang breathed a sigh of relief. He had already prepared himself for the giant wooden shield to be broken by the artillery fire. Well done, Chu Yang. Tiger shouted in surprise. Brother Chu Yang has blocked all the enemy's shells. Let's find a way to get the ship moving and break out of the enemy's encirclement before fighting. Even if the Navy consumed all the artillery fire on the wooden shield, the gap in the strength of the two sides was still large, and it would be disadvantageous to rashly engage in a boarding battle. Therefore, the Sun Pirates must not fight the Navy in the encirclement. Jinbei jumped back to the ship from the sea with a diving leap, looked at the tree wall above his head that firmly protected the ship, and then said, "Brother Tiger, we can't raise the sails now. We can only use the sea current to make the ship move forward." Tiger nodded, and then stood at the stern with Jinbei. The two of them, one on the left, and one on the right, each performed fishman jutsu, using the recoil of the water, to push the pirate ship forward at high speed. Chu Yang was not idle either. He used the wood escape technique, to create a pair of giant spear-shaped rams at the bow. When the pirate ship broke through the encirclement, the pair of giant rams directly overturned the warship in front. The warship that was broken in half was like the Titanic, gradually sinking to the bottom of the sea, and the Navy on the warship fell into the water like dumplings. A cheer came to Chu Yang's ears. After the successful breakout, Chu Yang released the wood escape technique, and the crew raised the sails again. Jinbei began to steer the ship, and with his superb skills, he quickly distanced himself from the Navy warship. Tiger walked up to Chu Yang and patted his shoulder. Just as he was about to say something, he found that Chu Yang was in a trance. At this time, Chu Yang's spiritual consciousness returned to the palace along with the mysterious fog. The Chu Yang of the Naruto world had been waiting for a long time. And on the vacant throne, there was another figure. Another new self. The Hokage Chu Yang happily walked forward and stood face to face with the pirate Chu Yang, and the new Chu Yang sitting on the throne also walked over. The memories of the three were shared again. After a while, the Hokage Chu Yang and the pirate Chu Yang stared at the latter in surprise. He is the Chu Yang from the magic world of Harry Potter. The magic Chu Yang just received an invitation to Hogwarts during the holiday and has not yet officially enrolled. He is still just an orphan in an orphanage. Magic Chu Yang said happily, "Originally I didn't want to go to Hogwarts to study. After all, although I yearned to go there, I was also afraid that I couldn't cope with it. But now I'm not afraid anymore." Hokage Chu Yang nodded and said, "I totally understand your idea. I was also scared to death when I traveled to the war-torn era. Although there are opportunities, there are more dangers." Pirate Chu Yang said unhappily, "You guys should be content. I had someone hang me up and put a branding iron on my chest. Do you know how painful it is?" Hokage Chu Yang and Magic Chu Yang shuddered at the same time. They had seen the scene from Pirate Chu Yang's memory. Magic Chu Yang forced a smile and said apologetically, "Now that I have your abilities, I can go to Hogwarts to learn magic with peace of mind." Hokage Chu Yang sighed, "I hope someone with some skills will come next time. You can't always get things for free from me." Pirate Chu Yang smiled, "The training speed has increased 3 times. What else do you want? You are really not satisfied." Hokage Chu Yang put his arm around Pirate Chu Yang's shoulder and said, "Brother, you are awesome this time. You have an armament haki, combined with wood release. It's so powerful, and I just happen to be very useful to you." Pirate Chu Yang asked in surprise, "Has the war started there?" Hokage Chu Yang said excitedly, "It is probably the last battle before the village is established. I want to witness the establishment of Konoha village with my own eyes. Please read more and recommend." Chapter 9: The Arrival of the Tree World. The same process as last time. The 3 Chu Yangs were submerged in the fog after only staying in the palace for a short while. When they woke up again, they had returned to their respective worlds. Chu Yang from the pirate world was receiving cheers from the crew on the pirate ship, and Chu Yang from the magic world was preparing for enrollment in a new school. Naruto world. A huge war that could change the pattern of the ninja world is about to happen. In today's era, there are no ninja villages in various countries. This is an era dominated by families, and it is also an era dominated by chaos and war. In the ninja world, the 2 most prestigious families are mobilizing their forces and preparing for a decisive battle. The Senju clan, the Uchiha clan. The war between the 2 families has lasted for many years. In a sense, their war history is the history of the ninja world. As the war progresses, the battle lines of the 2 families are getting longer and longer, so there is also a need for supplies. Chu Yang, who had just returned from the Soul Palace, immediately received an order from the clan, asking him to join a team in the family to snipe the logistics troops of the Uchiha clan. This has almost become the norm in this war. The logistics of the Senju clan often encountered attacks from the Uchiha clan. The 2 sides went back and forth, gradually adapting to such attacks in the war, and with vigilance, the surprise attack turned into a competition of reconnaissance and counter-reconnaissance. Chu Yang's team and the other side's logistics team chased each other on the grassland for 2 whole days before they determined the other side's position. When night fell, the Uchiha clan's logistics troops were stationed downstream of a small river, and Chu Yang and his team ambushed in the woods not far from the small river. Although the Uchiha clan's Sharingan is not as good as the Hyuga clan's Byakugan in reconnaissance, it still has very powerful observation capabilities. When taking action, you must pay attention to controlling the flow of chakra and not attract the attention of the other party. The captain repeatedly reminded the members of the team. Because this group of people are very young, they have little experience in fighting Uchiha. There is even a teenager who has just joined the war. The captain kept his eyes on Chu Yang and then shook his head secretly. People like him who are young and have no battlefield experience are the easiest to sacrifice. Under the cover of darkness, the team quickly dived into the river and slowly swam towards the enemy's camp. Chu Yang, who was at the end of the team, noticed something was wrong. The number of enemies on night watch was small, and they could not completely cover the surroundings of the camp, especially on the river bank, where there was no one. Moreover, the camp was very quiet, as if the people inside were all fast asleep. These 2 behaviors are very dangerous in the wild. Chu Yang wanted to speak up to remind the captain, but the other party took the lead and swam at the front of the team, a long distance away from Chu Yang. After landing, Chu Yang had the opportunity to tell the captain about his concerns, but the captain saw that he was young and did not take it seriously. Chu Yang sighed. Since he could not persuade him, he could only be careful himself. The captain quietly entered a tent. The other team members were scattered around, waiting for the captain's signal, ready to kill the Uchiha people who were resting. In the end, instead of waiting for the captain's signal, they only waited for a shrill scream. Damn. At the same time, fires lit up in all directions. The entire camp was brightly lit, and black figures were moving around. There were Uchiha ninjas everywhere. The next moment, Chu Yang saw the captain being dragged out of the tent by the Uchiha clan like a dead dog. Chu Yang and his team were ambushed. Find a way to break out. Someone in the team suddenly shouted, and in an instant, many ninjas broke out in different directions with panic on their faces. Idiot. Dispersing your strength at this time is courting death. They have already prepared traps for us. Chu Yang couldn't help but cursed. Sure enough, those Senju clan members who tried to break out were killed by the ambushed enemies in advance. This allowed the Senju clan members who had not yet escaped to quickly see the situation and gather towards Chu Yang's location. Go. The leading Uchiha obviously didn't want the enemy to have a chance to breathe. The two sides started a fierce gunfight. After fighting with the enemy several times, Chu Yang found that their combat power was very strong, and it was impossible for them to be logistics troops. This so-called logistics troops were a trap to lure them from the beginning. We will make the Senju clan pay the price. The other party came prepared. Chu Yang was unable to resist in terms of strength and numbers, and soon fell into a disadvantage. But the Uchiha clan still miscalculated. Chu Yang, who returned from the Soul Palace, had his innate strength tripled. His current proficiency in wood release and chakra volume were barely enough to perform some of the ultimate wood release ninjutsu. Just as the Senju clan was losing ground, Chu Yang stood up and began to form seals with his hands. The earth trembled. Countless thick trees rose from the ground, forming a sea of trees in an extremely short time, covering all the Uchiha clan members. Wood release. Tree World Advent. This is the only ultimate ninjutsu that Chu Yang knows, but it is not the complete version of the Tree World Advent, because even if all the chakra in Chu Yang is drained, this ninjutsu is only half of the original version. It is more like a low-profile version of the Sea of Trees Advent used by Yamato. The power does not reach the ultimate level, only between S and A levels. Even so, it was more than enough to deal with these Uchiha clan members. Under Chu Yang's control, the entire forest turned into a man-eating demon, constantly strangling or imprisoning the Uchiha clan's ninjas. They were submerged in the forest and had no place to stand. The places where they stood were all battlefields. There were many masters of fire escape ninjutsu in the Uchiha clan. They did not sit still and wait for death. They used a large number of fire escape ninjutsu to try to burn the forest with flames. They obviously had not seen the power of wood escape. The speed of fire destruction was far less than the speed of the forest's rebirth. No matter how hard this group of people tried, they were always submerged in the endless sea of trees, which made people feel desperate. And this was just an incomplete version of Tree World coming. The enemy was absolutely suppressed, and the Senju clan members took advantage of the situation to counterattack. With the help of other Senju clan members, most of the Uchiha clan members were killed in the forest. In the blink of an eye, the offensive and defensive advantages were reversed by Chu Yang. This is the power of wood escape on the battlefield, which is enough to determine the outcome of a small war. After the wood release wreaked havoc, the remaining enemies also chose to flee under Chu Yang's terrifying intimidation, and Chu Yang, who was already exhausted, did not pursue the victory. The surviving Senju tribe members surrounded Chu Yang, and everyone showed gratitude. Yang, this time thanks to you, otherwise we would definitely die here. I didn't expect you to know the wood release of tribe leader Hashirama. I heard that tribe leader Hashirama accepted a group of young people as disciples and taught them unique wood release ninjutsu. Are you one of them? The tribe members looked at Chu Yang in shock. Brothers, give some catch-up reading. It's Monday. Chapter 10 Fishman Karate vs Shadow Clone Technique. It was no secret that Hashirama Senju accepted disciples, but the specific list of people was not circulated. Therefore, the clan members also knew that Chu Yang was the disciple of the clan leader. So far, I haven't heard of anyone who has successfully learned wood release, and Yang is the first one. Not only that, his wood release is very powerful, so many good players of the Uchiha clan suffered a great loss just now. Yang is a genius in wood release. He can definitely pass on the clan leader's wood release. A group of people who completed the mission returned to the clan. The news that Chu Yang's team encountered an ambush and killed the enemy in a counterattack spread throughout the Senju clan in an instant. What really shocked people was not how many Uchiha clan members he killed, but that he mastered wood release. No one knows how powerful wood release is better than the Senju clan, and Chu Yang is the second clan member who has mastered this bloodline limit, which is bound to attract the attention of the entire clan. Not long after the news spread, Chu Yang received a summons from Hashirama Senju. He followed the guards all the way to the clan leader's mansion. The always generous Senju Hashirama did not let Chu Yang wait for long, and soon appeared in front of him. Senju Hashirama was always accompanied by his younger brother Senju Tobirama. That is, the second generation Hokage. Senju Hashirama brought Chu Yang to the courtyard with a smile on his face, and then said to him, "Show me your wood release." Chu Yang did as he was told, and performed several of the most basic techniques, all of which were ninjutsu taught by Senju Hashirama. Seeing Chu Yang's free and flexible manipulation of the trees without any stagnation, Senju Hashirama showed an admiring look. It is enough to see Chu Yang's talent in wood release. The blood limit is different from ordinary ninjutsu, and the difficulty and risk of practicing are very high. If it fails, the fusion of chakras of different attributes will leave an indelible sequelae to the ninja at the blood level. Only people with similar blood can minimize this risk. Originally, Senju Hashirama did not have much hope in finding a successor until Chu Yang appeared. The domineering nature of wood release is incomparable to most bloodline limits, and failure in practice is common. Failure in wood release practice will deplete the practitioner's vitality to varying degrees. Even if the same bloodline exempts most of the backlash, most of the young people chosen by Senju Hashirama have been lying in bed for a long time. This shows how precious Chu Yang is. Senju Hashirama vaguely felt that there would not be another member of the clan who could inherit his wood release. As soon as Senju Tobirama entered the door, he began to look at Chu Yang. Unlike Senju Hashirama's kindness, Senju Tobirama's eyes were very aggressive. Senju Tobirama knew very well how difficult it was to successfully practice wood release, not to mention reaching a certain level in such a short time. He was like a machine, scanning Chu Yang coldly. Chu Yang didn't like this feeling very much, and glared back fiercely. Senju Tobirama was stunned. Someone actually dared to glare at him, and it was a child in the clan. Ha ha ha. Seeing his brother being humiliated, Hashirama Senju burst into laughter. "Tobirama, you are so rude. He is still a child." "Brother, he is a child, but not an ordinary child." Tobirama Senju restrained his gaze and whispered, "He can actually practice wood release to the level of displaying the secrets in such a short time, which is even better than you did at the beginning." Hashirama Senju nodded. As the creator of wood release, he certainly understood what Tobirama Senju meant between the lines. This is a gifted teenager who needs to be taught well, so that he can take on great responsibilities in time. But Hashirama Senju is not a qualified master. In terms of teaching young people, his younger brother Tobirama is more suitable than him. In fact, this is indeed the case. As the founder of the ninja school, Tobirama Senju has made great contributions to the education cause of Konoha. Senju Hashirama smiled and patted Chu Yang on the shoulder. "From today on, you will follow Tobirama to learn ninjutsu knowledge and lay a good foundation. As a ninja, you can't just know would escape." Although Chu Yang looked calm on the surface, he was very happy in his heart. Who is Senju Tobirama? He is a rare great inventor in the history of the ninja world, and he has developed countless ninjutsu and forbidden techniques. Orochimaru can't even rank in front of him. If he can learn ninjutsu from him, he will undoubtedly get a huge improvement. Practice taijutsu first. Senju Tobirama stared at Chu Yang expressionlessly, as if he was admonishing and warning. People often talk about ninjutsu, but in fact, taijutsu is the most important foundation of ninjas. No matter how talented you are in ninjutsu, if you have poor taijutsu, you will be more likely to die on the battlefield than others. Senju Tobirama's expression eased a little, and he said, "I originally wanted to see your taijutsu level, but considering that you just came back from a mission, you should rest first, and come to me tomorrow morning." Chu Yang nodded obediently this time. After Chu Yang left, the two brothers discussed Chu Yang's training again, and talked until late at night. The next morning, Chu Yang went to see Senju Tobirama, and had breakfast at the clan leader's house. Similar to the life experience of the pirate Chu Yang, Hokage Chu Yang did not have any relatives, so most of the time, he either ate in the restaurant, or went to other people's homes for free meals, and the former was more common. Orphans were also one of the criteria for Senju Hashirama to select disciples. If one of them could change his fate, because of wood release, Senju Hashirama would be happy to see it. Just like Chu Yang. After breakfast, Senju Tobirama took Chu Yang to the training ground he used to use often, which was actually the place where he often practiced in the wild when he was a child. The training ground was not big, but it had targets and dummies, and the surrounding trees were also full of traces of practice. Let me see your physical skills. After saying that, Senju Tobirama made a seal with one hand and summoned a shadow clone. He planned to use the clone to test Chu Yang's weight. Chu Yang was not careless, because the opponent was a shadow clone. Shadow clones also have to be divided. A shadow clone at the level of Hokage must be stronger than him. Before going to the Soul Palace, Chu Yang's weakness was indeed physical skills, because he put a lot of energy into studying wood escape. However, after returning from the Soul Palace, it was another story. The shadow clone approached Chu Yang very quickly. Senju Tobirama, who was standing behind and observing Chu Yang's movements, frowned slightly. Chu Yang's reaction seemed a little slow. Just when Senju Tobirama was about to give Chu Yang a zero, Chu Yang suddenly moved. He squatted in a horse stance with his right fist like a spring at his waist. After exhaling a breath, he suddenly swung his fist. The moment Chu Yang swung his fist, Senju Tobirama, who was standing in the distance, felt the surge of air and was suddenly startled. Fishman Karate 2000 Tiles Punch. This punch has the power to split a mountain. The momentum was magnificent. The shadow clone wanted to fight back, but was directly broken by a punch. Chapter 11. Can a genius do whatever he wants? Senju Tobirama showed a surprised look. There were not many things in the world that could surprise him, but the boy in front of him refreshed his cognition again. The physical skills just now obviously did not belong to any school he had seen. It was a brand new school. How old is he to create a physical skills school? Senju Tobirama muttered to himself, and his eyes looking at Chu Yang had a significant change. This kid has great potential. However, admiration is admiration. Senju Tobirama will never let Chu Yang get proud, so he walked to Chu Yang and said in a calm tone, the physical skills are pretty good, and you need to continue to improve in the future. Chu Yang breathed a sigh of relief. It was okay to be okay. At least he didn't let the strict second generation scold him. He asked happily, then can I learn ninjutsu from you in the future? Senju Tobirama nodded slightly and said softly, before that, I have to review the ninjutsu you have learned before. A tall building starts from the ground, and the foundation must be laid. Then, Senju Tobirama explained to Chu Yang from the most basic 3 body techniques. Some knowledge about shadow clones was also added. Chu Yang, who had 3 times the talent, reviewed the knowledge very quickly and was often able to draw inferences from one thing, which made Senju Tobirama show a satisfied expression. What kind of students does the teacher like to teach the most? The kind of students who can understand the knowledge points easily without too much effort. Moreover, Chu Yang not only has a strong learning ability, but his practical ability is also amazing. As long as he knows, he can often do it. The more he taught, Senju Tobirama found that Chu Yang's learning speed was getting faster and faster. In the blink of an eye, Chu Yang understood the basics he wanted to review. Even if he added a lot of private goods and dry goods in it, Chu Yang had no problem understanding it. He seems to be talented not only in wood release. Senju Tobirama's palms were sweating, a little nervous, and a little excited. He had an urge to teach Chu Yang all his ninjutsu. Wanted to see how far he could learn. But in addition to being excited, Senju Tobirama dismissed this idea. Chu Yang was still a teenager after all. It would be very detrimental to his growth if he rashly came into contact with a large number of ninjutsu without a stable mind. As a ninjutsu researcher, Senju Tobirama knew too well how terrifying it would be for a person who only had ninjutsu in his eyes. Thinking of this, Senju Tobirama slowed down the pace of teaching Chu Yang, but even so, Chu Yang still learned a lot of knowledge from him in just one day. Senju Tobirama was both relieved and scared. The sky gradually darkened, and Chu Yang, who had a free dinner, was driven away by Senju Tobirama, who immediately found Senju Hashirama and told him about Chu Yang's situation. Senju Hashirama put down the information he had just delivered, his face solemn. According to Tobirama, Chu Yang was a super genius that the Senju clan rarely saw in 100 years. He originally thought that he had paid enough attention to Chu Yang's talent, but he didn't expect that the result was underestimated. Senju Hashirama smiled bitterly and said, why didn't I notice it before? He is an orphan. Senju Tobirama pondered. He has only learned the most basic things. No one will pay attention to him. He can't get in touch with advanced ninjutsu. He doesn't have the resources. Senju Hashirama looked at his brother Tobirama and asked, will he be the future of the Senju clan? Senju Tobirama shook his head and said, I don't know yet. After all, a dead genius has no value. Only a genius who survives can be called a genius. Senju Hashirama suddenly felt an incomparable headache, as if he was holding a priceless but extremely fragile work of art in his arms. He murmured, should I train him or protect him? Of course I should train him. A cruel look flashed in Senju Tobirama's eyes, and he said coldly, if he is damaged in the process of training, it proves that he is just a person of this level. It is not worthy of entrusting the future of the Senju clan to him. That's right, but Senju Hashirama scratched his head and said, if something really goes wrong, are you sure you won't feel sad? Feel sad? Of course I feel bad. Senju Tobirama has never seen such a talented child. If he loses such a successor, he will cry and wake up at night. Okay. But he still shook his head firmly. If Chu Yang always accepts the protection of the family and doesn't even go to the battlefield, how can he take the lead in the future? Then you take him with you and give him some proper training. Senju Hashirama emphasized again and again, fearing that his younger brother would mess up. Remember, I said proper. The two brothers once again had a heated discussion on the issue of Chu Yang's training. At this time, Chu Yang, who returned home, began to study Haki. He personally felt that Haki and wood release had a good compatibility. Just the entanglement of armament color can also make the power of wood release rise to a higher level. The current problem is, Chu Yang still has too little Haki. It is difficult to even cover the whole body, let alone cover any wood release ninjutsu. How can I quickly improve Haki? As long as you continue to study the seals and chakra flow of ninjutsu, the power can be significantly improved. But what about Haki? Haki doesn't have all these fancy things. In the final analysis, it is a concrete manifestation of spiritual power. As long as ordinary people feel the existence of Haki, they can use Haki, but there are differences in proficiency. Using ninjutsu to study Haki will not produce any results. The two are not the same thing at all. If you are serious, Haki may be more related to Jinjutsu. Both are things in the spiritual realm. Thinking of this, Chu Yang suddenly had a new idea. Can the use of Jinjutsu to stimulate the spiritual level achieve the effect of tempering Haki? Chu Yang couldn't wait to verify this question, so the next morning, he asked around for the best master of Jinjutsu in the clan. The entire Senju clan is not very good at Jinjutsu, but the Uchiha people like to study it very much. Many people in the clan have fallen into the Uchiha's Jinjutsu. If you are really curious, go to the dungeon and take a look. There are many Uchiha captives there. Chu Yang was excited when he heard it and went straight to the dungeon. On the other side, Senju Tobirama, who heard the news, was also confused. Why did this little bastard start studying illusions instead of ninjutsu and taijutsu? Can a genius do whatever he wants? You can study, but why go to the dungeon? Senju Tobirama got up and went out. The Uchiha clan members imprisoned in the dungeon were all powerful and valuable. As for the worthless ones, they had already died on the battlefield. Please read and recommend. Don't support the book, brothers. Chapter 12, a shortcut to improving your domineering power. As a key place for imprisoning the Uchiha clan, the dungeon was heavily guarded, but Chu Yang was still qualified to enter and exit the place freely. Because the news that he became the direct disciple of Senju Hashirama and Senju Tobirama had long spread throughout the Senju clan, Chu Yang's status at this time was no longer the same as before. Therefore, when he entered the dungeon, the guards only asked him a routine question. They even arranged for the elites of the clan to protect Chu Yang. However, before Chu Yang entered the dungeon, the guards still specifically reminded him, don't endanger the lives of these prisoners. Some of them are used to exchange for the Senju clan members. As the war continued, both sides had prisoners, and in the end, a negotiation was inevitable. The experiment Chu Yang was going to do would not endanger the safety of these people. On the contrary, he himself would be a little more dangerous. Chu Yang agreed and entered the dungeon. The Uchiha clan members who heard the noise turned their heads towards Chu Yang. Chu Yang only saw at this time that their eyes were entangled by the spell of sealing. The Senju clan learned the lesson of managing the Uchiha clan in this way with blood. In addition, the seals on the Uchiha clan members can prevent them from extracting chakra. If they want to cast illusions on Chu Yang, they have to take off these spells first. Chu Yang turned to the guard beside him and said, "Go find someone who is the most seriously injured and has the least chakra." The guard immediately looked embarrassed. Chu Yang smiled and explained, "I just want to see the Uchiha clan's Sharingan illusion." The guard breathed a sigh of relief and laughed, "That's no problem." Not long after, the guard carried a boy younger than Chu Yang out of the prison. The boy was pale and thin, listless, and looked like he had been malnourished for a long time. Even Chu Yang suspected that he could not squeeze out chakra. Chu Yang thought that the other party must have been hungry during the time he was in the dungeon. He was limp like a puddle of mud. Originally, Chu Yang was going to ask the guard to change, but Chu Yang changed his mind and decided to be more cautious. Who knows if he was pretending? Without the help of pupil technique, it is difficult for ordinary ninjas to see through the opponent's chakra unless there is a huge difference in strength. "Be careful, I'm going to reveal his spell." After the guard told Chu Yang, he reached out and pulled off the spell covering the boy's eyelids. Chu Yang didn't even need to say anything. The boy opened his eyes and stared at Chu Yang with his Sharingan. One single Magatama, the other double Magatama. The moment the two looked at each other, the boy's hateful eyes pulled Chu Yang into the illusion. Chu Yang's expression suddenly became blank and sluggish. This made the guard's breathing start to quicken, and he subconsciously wanted to knock out the Uchiha boy who was performing the illusion. "Wait." A heavy and mature voice came from outside, stopping the guard's action. The guard turned around and immediately bowed in shock. The person who came was Senju Tobirama. He stood aside and watched with interest, then smiled and said, "This kid is quite cautious. It won't be a problem for him to survive on the battlefield in the future. My elder brother also told me not to be too harsh on him, but now it seems that there is no need." The words between the lines of Senju Tobirama's words all implied that Chu Yang was to be trained as an heir, which shocked the guard. He felt that he had underestimated Chu Yang's status. The guard was about to say something when the Uchiha boy in his hand suddenly groaned and then fainted, and Chu Yang also woke up from the illusion. Chu Yang's eyes became lively again, and there was also a hint of fear. Although he was prepared, the Sharingan illusion was more terrifying than he expected. "Awake. How do you feel?" "Not bad." Chu Yang heard the familiar voice and hurriedly greeted Senju Tobirama respectfully. "Teacher, good morning." Senju Tobirama said indifferently, "You still know that I'm your teacher? You went into the dungeon without saying a word to do such a dangerous thing. Do you know how terrible the Sharingan illusion is?" Chu Yang hurriedly explained, "In the past, I encountered some blind Uchiha people in the mission, so I want to experience the real Sharingan, so as not to pay tuition in the battlefield in the future. It's better to be prepared in advance than to cram at the last minute." Senju Tobirama, who was a little angry at first, raised his mouth slightly after hearing this. Chu Yang's idea was very much in line with his mind. He always liked to make plans in advance. What bothered Senju Tobirama the most was his elder brother Hashirama's naivety of things will work out when the time comes. Thinking of this, Senju Tobirama no longer blamed Chu Yang for his reckless plan. Instead, he asked, what was it like to experience the Sharingan illusion for the first time? "It was terrible." Chu Yang looked serious and recalled carefully, "It is faster than ordinary illusions, making it difficult for the target to defend against it. Before starting, I reminded myself to be careful, but I was still tricked in an instant. What is really despairing is that the Sharingan illusion cannot be removed by conventional methods and can only be overcome by willpower." Senju Tobirama nodded, "You are right. So far, when we fought with the illusion masters of the Uchiha clan, there is basically no other way to avoid the illusions of the Sharingan, except not looking into each other's eyes. The only thing to be thankful for is that the advantages of illusions in war are not obvious. After all, the battlefield is the place where the effects of illusions are most easily disrupted." Chu Yang suddenly realized, in other words, except for small-scale battles and one-on-one battles, the role that illusions can play is very limited. "That's right." Senju Tobirama reminded Chu Yang, "So you only need to understand the characteristics of the Sharingan illusions, and don't go too deep and waste your time and energy." Chu Yang nodded respectfully, "Teacher, I understand. In fact, Senju Tobirama didn't think Chu Yang would stop after his reminder. In his eyes, this was a very opinionated young man. Therefore, Senju Tobirama just said a few words and left the dungeon. After Senju Tobirama left, Chu Yang silently felt his own domineering. Under the stimulation of the illusion, it really increased. After the negative emotions and scenes in the illusion stimulated Chu Yang's spirit, his momentum or will would burst out, which in turn affected his domineering. This argument has been confirmed. In addition, Chu Yang found that as the would escape continued to strengthen his cell activity and made his physique stronger, his domineering would also slowly increase, but the effect was not as obvious as the stimulation of the illusion. Excited Chu Yang took a long breath, glanced down at the Uchiha boy who had fainted, and said expressionlessly, "Next." In this way, after Chu Yang experienced 3 Sharingan illusions, his domineering had a breakthrough. Not only did his armed color domineering go to a high level, but he also comprehended the observation color domineering. Chapter 13, All or Nothing. The war between the two families lasted for half a month. In addition to the rising power of Hashirama Senju and Uchiha Madara, Chu Yang's name gradually entered the public's field of vision among the younger generation. The result of being famous is that danger will follow. After learning that Chu Yang is the heir cultivated by Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju, the Uchiha clan determined to kill Chu Yang. A genius that even Hashirama Senju values will definitely become a big worry for the Uchiha clan in the future. They will never allow a second Hashirama Senju to appear. Therefore, in the next few battles, Chu Yang was enthusiastically taken care of by the other side on the battlefield. Wherever Chu Yang appeared, it would become the second battlefield center after Hashirama Senju and Uchiha Madara. Tobirama Senju was not a pushover. He seemed to have anticipated the other side's plan long ago, and did not hesitate to use Chu Yang as a bait, and fought several beautiful ambushes. But this did not seem to dispel the Uchiha clan's idea of strangling Chu Yang in the cradle. As long as Chu Yang dared to appear on the battlefield, the other side would send the elites of the clan to surround and kill Chu Yang fearlessly. The unimaginable military strength and hysterical madness made the subsequent ambush battle fail to achieve the expected effect. At this point, things have gradually slipped out of the control of Senju Tobirama. When he came to his senses, it was too late to withdraw Chu Yang. Chu Yang on the battlefield seemed to have become a symbol in the fierce competition between the two sides. If Chu Yang was withdrawn to the rear for protection at this time, the momentum of the Senju clan would be severely hit. In this way, the advantages established by Senju Tobirama in the previous battles would lose their meaning. So the two sides could only focus on Chu Yang. Continuously investing troops and increasing the stakes, they launched an unimaginable fierce offensive and defensive battle. For the direction of the entire war, its importance even surpassed the battle between Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. Late at night, the camp of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Madara and his younger brother Uchiha Raizuna were discussing the key points of winning or losing this war in a brightly lit secret room. "Brother, if we delay any longer, the situation will be unfavorable to us. We must go all out and gather the remaining illusion masters in the clan to get rid of that kid called Senju Yang. As long as he dies, the Senju clan, which is so powerful, will instantly fall to the bottom. Then we will definitely win this war." Uchiha Raizuna gave his opinion under great mental pressure, his eyes full of bloodshot. Uchiha Madara did not respond immediately, his eyes staring at the crisscrossing chess pieces on the sand table. Just as Raizuna said, the Senju clan is constantly eroding their power. If we continue to maintain the status quo, it is only a matter of time before we lose this war. You will lead the team to do this personally, and you must succeed. If you fail, we will never be able to turn the tables. Uchiha Madara said heavily. Uchiha Raizuna nodded, turned around and walked out of the secret room. Looking at his brother's back as he left, Uchiha Madara suddenly felt a little regretful. If possible, he wanted to go in person, but he had to hold back Senju Hashirama on the front battlefield. Apart from him, no one in the Uchiha clan could resist Hashirama, and vice versa. That night, Uchiha Raizuna summoned 10 illusion masters in the clan, preparing to sneak into the Senju clan camp and assassinate Chu Yang. Of course, there are many people in the Uchiha clan who are good at illusions, but in assassinations, the more people there are, the greater the chance of problems. 10 people are the best number that Uchiha Raizuna has repeatedly considered, and there are even some of these 10 people who can be abandoned at critical moments. They know it well, and they have no regrets. Under the moonlight, this group of people quietly hide in the darkness. At the same time, Chu Yang has returned to the tent to rest after a day of fighting. But for some reason, Chu Yang just can't sleep. Obviously, his tired eyelids are fighting, but he always wakes up suddenly when he is about to fall asleep. What kind of weird negative buff is this? After tossing and turning on the bed for a long time, Chu Yang got up angrily, sat on the bed, and cursed in a low voice, and then fell into self-doubt. Could it be that my body is too weak? PFFT, PFFT, PFFT. As soon as the voice fell, Chu Yang hurriedly denied it. He was a masculine young man with strong firepower. How could he be weak? If it was not a physical problem, then it was a mental problem. Speaking of the spirit, Chu Yang found that not only his domineering aura became stronger, but also his intuition became more acute than before when facing danger on the battlefield. It must be some danger that makes me feel uneasy. Chu Yang's mind flashed, and then he used his observation haki with all his strength to completely cover his surroundings. Through the perception of observation haki, Chu Yang found that 11 people with unknown auras were crossing the sentry post of the Senju clan and rushing towards his direction. Assassination? Chu Yang sneered, guessing the Uchiha clan's idea, but he didn't expect that the other party would actually regard him as an assassination target. Chu Yang used the wood-release shadow clone, leaving the clone on the bed and sneaking away. He was ready to catch the turtle in the urn. In order to deceive the enemy, Chu Yang did not inform the guards standing guard outside. On the other side, Uchiha Raizuna led the masters of the clan to break through the security of the Senju clan. Every time they passed a sentry, there would be an illusion master responsible for quietly hypnotizing the guards. After breaking through many sieges, Uchiha Raizuna led his men to the vicinity of Chu Yang's tent. As long as they dealt with the guards at the door, their mission this time would be a done deal. At the signal of Uchiha Raizuna's eyes, 5 illusion masters attacked at the same time, silently trapping all the guards in illusion. Master Raizuna, isn't it too smooth? The oldest man in the team suddenly spoke. The most proficient illusionist in the clan is here. If this fails, then we don't have to continue fighting with the Senju clan. Just surrender directly. Uchiha Raizuna replied coldly. The old man smiled bitterly, said no more, and returned to the team. The others stood guard outside. Uchiha Raizuna opened the tent and walked in alone. He happened to see Chu Yang sleeping soundly, with a tired look on his face. So young. The moment Uchiha Raizuna saw Chu Yang's face, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He was already considered a leader of the younger generation in the ninja world, but Chu Yang was younger than him. Even Uchiha Raizuna, who was an enemy, would feel sorry to kill such a young genius. However, Uchiha Raizuna knew very well that being kind to the enemy was cruel to oneself. If Chu Yang was allowed to grow up, what awaited the Uchiha clan might be hell. Just thinking of this, Uchiha Raizuna's face became ferocious, and he took out a kunai and stabbed it hard at Chu Yang's neck. The moment the kunai pierced Chu Yang's neck, the touch of the kunai fed back made Uchiha Raizuna's face pale. Wooden clone. Chapter 14. Uchiha loses the chance to turn the tables, seeking follow-up reading. Seeing the Chu Yang on the bed gradually turning into a piece of wood, Uchiha Raizuna's eyes almost popped out. How could it be a wooden clone? Uchiha Raizuna screamed heartbreakingly, like a dog who was ruthlessly abandoned by a scumbag. His heart sank straight into hell. He knew what this meant. Ah. Lord Izuna. There is an ambush. Help. Lord Izuna. Uchiha Raizuna suddenly lifted up the tent and found that there were dense figures around. The firelight illuminated the place in an instant. The subordinates outside the tent were full of kunai and shurikens, falling in a pool of blood, dying, and even worse, staring at Uchiha Raizuna with their eyes wide open. It was as if they were questioning him. Why did you bring us here to die? How is this possible? Uchiha Raizuna looked at Chu Yang painfully and asked in an unbelievable tone, how did you know we would come to assassinate you? Chu Yang scratched his head embarrassedly and said, you may not believe it, I just couldn't sleep, so I got up for a walk. Uchiha Raizuna's eyes widened. Then a humiliated expression appeared on his face. How could he believe such an explanation? You said you couldn't sleep. Why did you put a shadow clone on the bed? Uchiha Raizuna, who was furious, even spit out blood on the spot. Capture him alive. Senju Hashirama's eyes flashed with a trace of pity. It can be seen that he did not want to hurt his friend Uchiha Madara's younger brother. The other clansmen received the order and slowly surrounded Uchiha Raizuna. Boy, did you really not sleep and get up for a walk and then found out that these people were going to assassinate you? Senju Tobirama asked curiously. How is it possible? Chu Yang rolled his eyes and started talking nonsense. They haven't been able to kill me after several battles. They must be up to something bad. I haven't slept for several days. I have been vigilant and ready because I guessed that they would come to assassinate me. Senju Hashirama laughed and teased. Are you afraid and can't sleep? Chu Yang rolled his eyes at him and said speechlessly, Master, if you talk like this, then we can't continue the conversation. Hearing this, Senju Tobirama also smiled knowingly. At this time, Uchiha Raizuna, who realized that the failure of the mission would cause a devastating blow to the Uchiha, had gone crazy. His eyes were bloodshot, like a beast on the verge of death. Seeing him like this, the Senju people who surrounded him felt inexplicably panicked. Uchiha Raizuna, covered in blood, launched a suicidal attack on the crowd. He was fearless and had only one goal, which was to kill Chu Yang. No matter what happened today, he would kill Chu Yang. Faced with Uchiha Raizuna, who attacked the encirclement at all costs, the defense line of the Senju clan gradually lost. Due to the previous order of capturing alive by Senju Hashirama, they did not dare to kill him. As the saying goes, hesitation will lead to defeat. Their hesitation gave Uchiha Raizuna a chance, and the latter tore open the gap in the encirclement and went straight to Chu Yang. Some of the Uchiha clan members who were supposed to be dead on the ground suddenly resurrected. At the moment of being ambushed, some of them used the bodies of their companions to resist the damage and pretended to be dead. However, each of them was indeed seriously injured and would not live long. This was completely a last gasp. They had to seize the last chance and make the last effort for Uchiha Raizuna to kill Chu Yang. Even Senju Tobirama did not expect this. Under carelessness, he was actually hit by the illusion and fell into a short stagnation. Senju Hashirama, known as the god of ninja, also did not react. The strength of the two sides was very different. The Uchiha clan members could only control them for a short time before the illusion would fail. But this was enough to assassinate Chu Yang. Uchiha Raizuna's Sharingan was rotating. As long as Chu Yang fell into the illusion and lost his defense, the kunai in his hand could easily cut Chu Yang's neck. But something that Uchiha Raizuna had not expected happened. Chu Yang calmly closed his eyes without any fear. Do you think you won't die if you don't fall into the illusion? Idiot. Uchiha Raizuna roared and swung the kunai. He seemed to see the scene of Chu Yang's neck artery rupture. Who knew that Chu Yang, who had his eyes closed, easily dodged Uchiha Raizuna's attack? Uchiha Raizuna looked at Chu Yang with a ridiculous face, then gritted his teeth and stabbed again with the kunai in his hand. Then it was dodged again. Chu Yang took the opportunity to hit Uchiha Raizuna's waist with a Shosengun. One punch to the liver. Uchiha Raizuna looked at Chu Yang as if he had seen a ghost. He even ignored the severe pain from his waist. You clearly had your eyes closed. How could you accurately predict my every move? As Uchiha Raizuna spat out a large mouthful of blood, his breath suddenly weakened. What else could it be? Of course it was his observation haki. Chu Yang answered seriously. I guessed it. Puff. Uchiha Raizuna was furious and vomited blood again. His eyes rolled back and he fainted completely. The Uchiha clan members who used their lives to hold back Hashirama, Senju and Tobirama also fell down, their faces full of disbelief. Their desperate gamble became a huge joke in front of Chu Yang. Hashirama Senju woke up and looked at Chu Yang for the first time. He was relieved after confirming that he was safe. The same was true for Tobirama Senju. Senju Hashirama said with a bitter smile, I was careless and something almost went wrong. Chu Yang smiled and said, it doesn't matter. After catching Uchiha Raizuna, the initiative is in our hands. It's up to us to fight or make peace. Senju Tobirama said, your performance this time has impressed me. It seems that there is no need to train you extra in the future. Chu Yang laughed. Not only Senju Tobirama, but all the clan members saw Chu Yang's performance just now and really admired it from the bottom of their hearts. the sky gradually brightened. Uchiha Madara, who had waited for his brother all night, but couldn't wait for him, could only vent his anger on the sand table, and destroyed it with one punch. He knew that after this incident, the Uchiha clan had completely lost the opportunity to turn the tables, and continuing to fight would only lead to death. Not only Uchiha Madara understood this matter, when the news that Uchiha Raizuna was captured after the assassination failed was passed back to the Uchiha clan, many people immediately thought of surrendering. After only one day, Uchiha Madara saw many people sneaking out of the camp. The morale of the people was so low that nothing could be done to save the situation. As the clan leader, the last thing Uchiha Madara could do was to find Senju Hashirama for the final duel. Please read, recommend, and vote for me. Brothers, if you don't want to, please leave more comments. Thanks. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15, Fusion of Taijutsu and Ninjutsu. Brother, we have the upper hand now. There is no need to risk our lives to duel with that Uchiha Madara guy. After receiving the news, Tobirama Senju rushed to stop Hashirama Senju as soon as possible. He knew that with the other party's character, he would definitely agree to the duel. Hashirama Senju was silent for a while, then asked, Tobirama, do you know how many of our clansmen have died in this war? Tobirama Senju choked when he heard this, because this is a number that makes people feel distressed when they think about it. Seeing his brother's expression, Hashirama Senju's eyes flashed with grief, and he said in a deep voice, of course I understand that taking advantage of the current advantage is the safest way to win, but this is a way to win at the cost of more lives, and I can't bear it. When Itama and Kama died, I vowed to end the war as soon as possible. The sooner this war ends, the more people will survive. Hearing this, Tobirama Senju knew that his brother had made up his mind, and no matter what he said, it would be useless. Looking at his moody brother, Senju Tobirama patted his shoulder and said with a heroic smile, Tobirama, have some confidence in me. Do you think I will lose? Of course you won't lose. I'm just worried that you won't be able to be ruthless at the critical moment. Senju Tobirama smiled bitterly and then solemnly warned, you must remember that you are the patriarch of the Senju clan. This is not a simple victory or defeat. It is also related to the fate of thousands of clansmen behind you. Remember. Senju Hashirama nodded seriously. I promise that no one will disturb your duel. After saying this, Senju Tobirama walked out of the room without even saying hello. Senju Hashirama knew that he was angry and watched his brother's back with apology. Senju Tobirama left the room feeling uneasy, so he wandered aimlessly on the street, and in a trance he actually walked to Chu Yang's residence. At this time, Chu Yang was practicing fishman karate in the yard. Senju Tobirama stood outside the courtyard, watching silently, and was gradually attracted by this new physical training school. After no longer thinking about those annoying things, the depression in Senju Tobirama's heart suddenly dissipated a lot. Yang, your physical training seems to contain some water-attributed chakra changes. Senju Tobirama, who had been observing for a long time, couldn't help but ask. Chu Yang had actually sensed the existence of Senju Tobirama a long time ago, but just pretended not to know. It was not until Senju Tobirama spoke that he pretended to be surprised. Teacher, hello. Chu Yang greeted respectfully. Yeah. Senju Tobirama responded casually, and then couldn't wait to ask, your physical training is very special. Can you tell me in detail? Chu Yang nodded. In fact, Chu Yang just practiced a special skill in urine karate. Control water. Urine karate is a special physical training that has the ability to control water flow, but this is to a certain extent related to the racial talent of the urine people. As an ordinary person, Chu Yang, theoretically, is impossible to reach this level. Chu Yang also knew this, so he decided to find another way and combine the power of water escape to simulate this skill. Wood escape itself is a fusion of water attribute chakra and earth attribute chakra. Chu Yang is naturally familiar with the power of water escape. Chu Yang just started to try and had some eyebrows, but then Senju Tobirama came, so he simply told his ideas and asked him to give him advice. After all, he is the #1 inventor in the history of the ninja world, and Senju Tobirama's mind is much better than Chu Yang. Listening to Chu Yang's description, Senju Tobirama smiled and nodded frequently. This kind of skill that combines physical skills and ninjutsu is not uncommon in the ninja world, but without exception, the difficulty of development is extremely high. However, Chu Yang was able to complete the prototype with his own efforts. In Senju Tobirama's view, Chu Yang's thinking is superior to ordinary people, which coincides with the attributes of a researcher like him. Not only can you inherit my elder brother's wood escape, but you can also inherit my ninjutsu and continue to innovate. Senju Tobirama saw many possibilities in Chu Yang. Chu Yang was dry-mouthed after talking for a long time, but he didn't get any advice. He raised his head and saw Senju Tobirama looking at him with a smile. Chu Yang shuddered with fear. Today's sun is likely to rise from the west, and Senju Tobirama, who is always serious, is smiling. Is it an illusion? When Chu Yang looked at Senju Tobirama again, he found that he had returned to his usual cold appearance. It was indeed an illusion. There is nothing wrong with your idea of this physical technique. The key point is that you don't know enough about the power of water escape, and you only stay at a very superficial stage, which will hinder the progress of your physical technique. To perfect this physical technique, starting today, you must learn more about water escape from me. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. What is the ninjutsu that the second generation Hokage is best at? Flying Thunder God. No. The answer is water escape. Before creating Flying Thunder God, Senju Tobirama started with water escape and killed a lot in the family war. So Chu Yang began to learn water escape from Senju Tobirama with great interest. The latter also started teaching mode, starting from the basics. Both of them were very immersed in it, and they didn't end the teaching until it got dark. Before leaving, Senju Tobirama hesitated at the door, as if he was making some important decision. The clan leader is going to duel with Uchiha Madara. As for the location of the duel, I'm the only one in the clan who knows it. I plan to take you with me. What do you think? The duel between Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. Is there any need to think about it? This is the most exciting battle in the history of the ninja world, and there is the second generation Hokage as a bodyguard. What is there to hesitate about? I want to go. Chu Yang said excitedly. Senju Tobirama smiled, as if he had expected Chu Yang's reaction, and said, watching the battle between strong people of that level, although it will be dangerous, it will also benefit you a lot. As a user of wood escape, you should carefully observe the clan leader's fighting style. Chu Yang understood that this was a very good opportunity. Before on the battlefield, he was busy saving his life, so how could he have time to observe Senju Hashirama's battle? Late at night the next day, two figures shuttled through the woods like ghosts and came to a hidden valley. However, this place was different from the Valley of the End in Chu Yang's memory. There was no waterfall, only a stream, so it should be somewhere else. Moreover, the plot did not develop to the moment of the final battle in the Valley of the End. When they arrived at the place, Senju Tobirama hid his body with Chu Yang and walked around. Although according to Uchiha Madara's character, he would never set an ambush if he agreed to a duel, but for the sake of safety, Senju Tobirama still left the spell of Flying Thunder God in many places and set up many detonating talisman traps. If there was anything wrong, he would stop the duel. Chapter 16 The Battle of the Top Powerful Ones. Chu Yang, who was squatting in the bushes, had nothing to do, so he looked up to count the stars. However, the sky was overcast today, and he could not see the stars at all. When the clouds covered the moonlight above his head for the third time, Chu Yang's observation haki sensed two very powerful auras. The auras were so strong that Chu Yang was frightened and had to actively shut down his observation haki. Immediately, Senju Tobirama whispered in Chu Yang's ear, "Here they come. Here they come." These two simple words made Chu Yang's heart suddenly rise. Chu Yang carefully stretched his head out and finally saw the figure of Senju Hashirama. Opposite him was the famous Uchiha Madara. As fate would have it, the two men stared at each other across a stream. "Bada, surrender. Let's end this meaningless war together." Senju Hashirama said loudly, "You and I can completely establish a peaceful environment so that those children and the tribe can live in peace and happiness. You are still as naive as ever. Sometimes I really envy you. Uchiha Madara looked at Senju Hashirama with a complicated expression, shook his head, and said coldly, "Where is Aizen? Did you kill him?" Senju Hashirama explained, "He is not dead." Hearing the news that his brother was not dead, Uchiha Madara's indifferent expression finally eased, and a trace of relief flashed in his eyes. Uchiha Madara said, "Hashirama, unless we decide the winner today, this war will not end. If you want peace, then use your fists to speak." Hearing this, Senju Hashirama finally threw away the last fluke in his heart, took a deep breath, and prepared for battle. Uchiha Madara smiled. He just wanted to see the other party show his full strength. Before on the battlefield, it was just a small fight. The next second, the two figures collided with each other and started a fierce battle. Chu Yang observed that, whether it was Uchiha Madara or Senju Hashirama, they did not use ninjutsu very often, and most of the battles were fought with physical skills. The top strong men's battles were all very familiar with the ninjutsu, and they did not need to make too many seals when using them, or they were simplified to only 2 or 3 seals. Otherwise, the window of time for making seals would be a huge flaw in the eyes of the enemy. So far, Uchiha Madara has only used fire escape to assist in the battle, and Senju Hashirama has only used wood escape. But it is precisely this extremely simple battle that gave Chu Yang a very strong visual impact. Gradually, the speed of their battle has exceeded the limit of human vision, and Chu Yang can only see a series of blurred figures, and cannot see the specific movements. Senju Hashirama, who was standing next to Chu Yang, noticed Chu Yang's predicament at this time, and comforted him a few words. "There is no way to do this. Unless you have a special eye technique such as the Sharingan or the Byakugan, that can greatly improve your vision, it is really difficult for ordinary people to keep up with the movements of the top strong men." Even if Chu Yang's body is strengthened by wood escape, he can only see for a little longer than ordinary people. The battle between the two affected a wide area, and the entire valley was ravaged. The earth collapsed, the trees, flowers, and grass turned to ashes, and everything was destroyed. Chu Yang was terrified, and before he could react, he was grabbed by Senju Hashirama and quickly fled from the edge of the battlefield. Not long after he left, a fireball the size of a 3-story building fell on the place where they had previously settled, and the aftermath of the explosion directly scraped the ground 3 feet. When Chu Yang landed, he looked back and could only see a piece of black charcoal. If he was still standing there, let alone would release, even the King of Heaven could not save him. In an instant, cold sweat soaked Chu Yang's back, and he shook unconsciously. Senju Hashirama smiled and said, "Did you see? Even a simple great fireball technique has different powers in different people's hands." Chu Yang couldn't help but roll his eyes. "You call that the great fireball technique? If you don't know, you might think a mushroom egg fell on my head." At this time, Senju Hashirama did not forget to teach Chu Yang, who was still in shock. "You are very smart, but your problem is that you are too smart. You can easily learn everything, and then you want to learn everything. In the end, you are just a fool who knows a little bit of everything." Chu Yang did not deny Senju Hashirama's point of view, but he was not fighting alone, was he? So many clones learned from each other and integrated each other's knowledge. Ordinary people's problems would not become Chu Yang's problems. The path he took was destined to be unimaginable and incomprehensible to ordinary people. As the moon in the sky became brighter and brighter, the battle gradually became white hot. The trembling of the earth attracted Chu Yang's attention. He just looked up and saw an indescribable huge figure rising from the ground. The tree man, which was thousands of feet tall, blocked the moonlight in the sky at once, like an ancient demon god descending. Wood release, woodman technique. Senju Hashirama, standing on the shoulder of the wooden man, had a solemn expression. At this point in the battle, both sides took out their best skills, and the victory or defeat depended on this move. Boom. The wooden man moved, and every time it took a step, the whole valley was shaking. Right in front of the wooden man, Uchiha Madara began to form a seal, and the Magatama in his main Jiki Sharingan kept spinning. Uchiha Madara released his strength to the limit, and in one breath, he consumed 90% of his body's chakra, and the blue flame burned from the void, condensing into a skeleton phantom. As the flame burned more and more, the phantom solidified, and the skeleton gradually turned into a complete human form, and finally condensed into a huge phantom of martial god wearing samurai armor. The mighty martial goddess, Susanoo, whose size is comparable to that of the wooden man. The armor behind him has a pair of wings, and he has 4 arms, each holding a sword. Under the control of Uchiha Madara, the martial god and the wooden man are getting closer and closer, and he is the first to cut a sword. The wooden man stretched out his hand, roughly grabbed the long sword formed by the energy in the martial god's hand, and dragged the martial god in front of him with his backhand, and punched him hard. The battle between the 2 giants made Chu Yang's blood boil. Big brother will definitely win. Uchiha Madara doesn't have that much physical strength to maintain Susanoo. His strength is almost at its limit. Senju Tobirama said coldly. At this time, Chu Yang also found that as the time when Susanoo appeared became longer and longer, its movements became slower and slower. In the previous battle, Uchiha Madara had accumulated a lot of injuries, and Senju Hashirama, with his excellent healing ability, was in much better physical condition than Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara, who hollowed out his body to summon Susanoo, was already at the end of his strength. Senju Tobirama sighed. It's really ironic. His current situation is exactly the same as that of the Uchiha clan. With this sigh, Susanoo, which was like a demon god, collapsed with a bang. Please read, recommend, and comment. Chapter 17. Why do you always make me angry? Uchiha Madara lost. Lost without any surprise. Even though Chu Yang knew the ending long ago, he still couldn't help but feel sorry for him. From the beginning, Uchiha Madara could not defeat an alien like Senju Hashirama. Why did Uchiha Madara later insist on getting Hashirama's cells? Not only to gain the power of the Samsara, but also to gain his terrifying self-healing ability. Compared with Senju Hashirama's self-healing ability, most Tell beasts can't compare with him. After Uchiha Madara was defeated, Senju Hashirama did not kill him, but asked him to cooperate with him again, hoping that the 2 of them would build a peaceful village together. Uchiha Madara, lying on the ground, had a complicated expression. He murmured, "The Uchiha clan lost, and I lost too. Even without this battle, the Uchiha clan would have the same fate." The general trend was that they had no chance at all. Uchiha Madara, whose brother Izuna was still alive, had not fallen into paranoia. He hesitated for a while and finally nodded in agreement. At the same time, Chu Yang clearly felt the murderous intent coming out of Senju Tobirama. It can be seen that he was very dissatisfied with his brother's behavior. Why not kill Uchiha Madara? That person is destined to become a factor of instability. Senju Tobirama saw further than Hashirama. He saw not only Uchiha Madara, but also the entire Uchiha family. Unless the Senju clan is willing to give up the main position, these people will rebel sooner or later, because the power they possess is too strong. No powerful family is willing to be inferior to others. If it weren't for the monster Senju Hashirama, the Senju clan might have lost today. Teacher, don't worry about the Uchiha clan. This family itself is not united. Every head of the family has relied on his own strong strength to get to the top. We only need to constantly win them over and divide them, and the Uchiha clan will not be able to grow. The young voice suddenly awakened Senju Tobirama, who was in anger, and he looked at Chu Yang thoughtfully. Senju Tobirama asked, "If it were you, what would you do?" Chu Yang smiled and said, "Set up a department that appears to have a high status, but has no real power. Praise them highly, and have them perform tasks that have an extremely low survival rate. Let them accept people's praise and enjoy the halo of a hero, and then let them die willingly, or should I say sacrifice. You can think of it as a high-level form of moral kidnapping." Moral kidnapping? Senju Tobirama muttered this word that he heard for the first time. His eyes lit up slightly. He did not deny that Chu Yang's point of view was quite interesting. But after careful consideration, Senju Tobirama shook his head and said, "You make it too simple. Uchiha Madara is not a fool. He can see through your little thoughts at a glance. It is better to limit their power from the beginning and slowly weaken them until they are unable to resist." Chu Yang explained, "This plan has to start from the emotional aspect. We need to make the Uchiha clan feel a sense of belonging to the village that the clan leader is going to build next. We can't let them become marginalized people in the village, otherwise they will firmly stick together for warmth and become more united under external pressure. divide them emotionally, create a sense of belonging, moral kidnapping, die under the halo of a hero. Senju Tobirama closed his eyes, and Chu Yang's voice kept passing through his mind. His point of view was very strange, and a little creepy, when he thought about it carefully. As the saying goes, a soft knife hurts the most, especially a rusty knife. Using beautiful emotions as bait is simply playing with people's hearts. Senju Tobirama suddenly narrowed his eyes. Luckily you are from the Senju clan, otherwise I would definitely kill you first. Chu Yang curled his lips and said, "Teacher, it's not kind of you to say that. I gave you advice because I saw you were worried. Aren't you killing the donkey after it has done its job?" Humph. Senju Tobirama's mouth slightly raised. Chu Yang provided him with a new idea to solve the problem, which made him feel much better. He vaguely felt that this was more vicious than suppressing the Uchiha clan openly, and more appropriate. He didn't have to conflict with his elder brother Hashirama for the Uchiha clan. It was simply killing two birds with one stone. At dawn, Senju Tobirama took Chu Yang back to the base first, rushed to the dungeon without stopping, and then released the Uchiha clan members in an orderly manner. The sealing technique had not been lifted, and releasing them was just to make it easier for the doctors to treat them. Next, they had to wait for the Uchiha clan to come and lead the people. After all, under the promotion of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, the union of the two clans was a foregone conclusion. Giving some small favors in advance would help win people's hearts. Senju Tobirama had a high prestige in the clan. Even if he released the enemy on his own initiative, no clan member would question it. This made Chu Yang amazed. "Senju Tobirama, what on earth do you want to do?" Uchiha Izuna walked up to Senju Tobirama, with question marks written all over his face. He didn't understand this wave of operations at all. Senju Tobirama glanced at him and said lightly, "The Senju clan and the Uchiha clan are already planning to negotiate, and releasing you is just to make the negotiations go smoothly. Why do you want to negotiate when you have such a great advantage?" Uchiha Izuna suddenly asked in surprise, "Was Senju Hashirama defeated by my eldest brother? Wake up. Even if he fights 100 times, Uchiha Madara can't defeat my eldest brother." Senju Tobirama said disdainfully, "Uchiha Madara lost, but my eldest brother decided to put aside the past grudges and cooperate with you. Don't be ungrateful." Impossible. Uchiha Izuna's face changed drastically. His heart was dead. He gritted his teeth and said, "The Uchiha clan will never accept peace talks." Chu Yang looked at him curiously and asked, "Then how long are you going to fight? Until the Uchiha clan is wiped out? Even Uchiha Madara has lost. What do you have to fight us?" Puff. Uchiha Izuna was speechless after being retorted by Chu Yang. He was furious again and spit out a mouthful of hot blood. "This is the third time. Every knife pierces my heart." He looked at the young man indignantly. "Why are you not angry with anyone but me?" In the evening, Hashirama Senju and Uchiha Madara came to the Senju clan's base together, followed by the previously captured Senju people. Senju Tobirama, who had been prepared, also delivered the Uchiha people to Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara looked at him in surprise. In his memory, Senju Tobirama was not such an easy guy to talk to. However, then Senju Tobirama said something that shocked him. "From now on, we are companions." Chapter 18. We need to help Uchiha. After returning to the tribe, Uchiha Izuna's mind was full of Chu Yang's murderous words. He was not convinced and wanted to persuade Uchiha Madara to overturn the agreement. Uchiha Madara was silent for a long time and only said, "Go to the tribe to see how the tribe members react, and then come back to tell me your decision." So Uchiha Izuna had to wander the streets alone. In order not to disturb the people, he even used the transformation technique. It was already approaching dusk. Under the setting sun, smoke rose from every household. Smelling the smoke, Uchiha Izuna's nerves, which had been tense by the war for days, gradually relaxed. He heard laughter. Uchiha Izuna turned his head and saw a group of children running past him while playing and laughing. The laughter came from the children's play. But it was not just that. The tribe members came laughing from all directions and passed by Uchiha Izuna, talking about family matters and laughing intermittently. It was like a melodious little tune, slowly entering the ears, refreshing. This was a scene that had not appeared in Uchiha Izuna's memory for a long time. He thought that the Uchiha clan would not appear again until the Senju clan was completely defeated. However, in fact, after the news of the two families' cessation of war and alliance spread, the shadow of the war on people was rapidly fading. Uchiha Izuna stood there blankly, feeling the thriving traffic around him. All kinds of feelings surged in his heart. He realized that he might be wrong. If he persisted, his enemy might not be the Senju clan, but the clansmen around him who had longed for peace for a long time. Uchiha Izuna, who originally opposed the alliance, could only bow his head under the heavy public opinion. He no longer prevented the alliance between the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan. Not long after, the news of the alliance between the two families continued to spread throughout the ninja world, and caused shocks to all forces. The two families put aside their prejudices and worked together to build the first ninja village in the history of the ninja world according to the ideals of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. But new troubles are coming. While Konoha village is building a large-scale project, the major families and ordinary people are also busy voting for the first generation of Hokage of Konoha village. The people's will is of course Senju Hashirama, but Chu Yang gave Senju Tobirama a different opinion. The clan leader will definitely vote for Uchiha Madara, so why not do the same and vote for Uchiha Madara? Chu Yang looked at Senju Tobirama with a smile, like a little fox. Senju Tobirama immediately said alertly, "Boy, do you know what you are saying? What if something goes wrong and Uchiha Madara really becomes Hokage? The Konoha village that big brother has worked so hard to build will be ruined." Chu Yang explained, "Teacher, you should have investigated the evaluation of Uchiha Madara within the Uchiha clan. It can be said that it has fallen to the bottom. If the clan leader had not repeatedly emphasized the significance of Uchiha Madara's position in Konoha village, I'm afraid he would not be able to suppress those clan members. In this case, how many people would choose him to be the first Hokage? The vote of you and the clan leader is just a timely help. Let's take a step back. Even if you really want Uchiha Madara to become the first Hokage, the people below will not agree. The first to oppose are those Uchiha clan members who want Uchiha Madara to step down. Senju Hashirama wanted to give up his position, but the people below would never agree. They would only keep him in the high position. Isn't that how he got the yellow robe? Senju Tobirama pondered for a while and asked, "Is this also part of your plan to win people's hearts?" Chu Yang laughed and said, "We can win over some Uchiha clan members, accelerate their internal division, isolate Uchiha Madara, and then accept him, and let him find a sense of belonging here." Chu Yang nodded, and then whispered, "An Uchiha Madara who is trapped in Konoha village by the ties of family and friendship and works hard is much better than an Uchiha Madara who is deserted by his friends and leaves with hatred, right?" It was like a gust of cold wind blowing, and the hairs on Senju Tobirama's body stood up instantly. He understood that Chu Yang wanted to lock Uchiha Madara tightly with the shackles of emotions. Will this work? Senju Tobirama was not sure, because Uchiha Madara was a very ambitious guy, but there was no doubt that this plan would benefit Konoha village and the Senju clan without any harm. Even if they could not achieve the desired effect on Uchiha Madara in the end, they would have won. After Chu Yang's instigation, Senju Tobirama found Senju Hashirama who was worried about the election, and told him that he wanted to vote for Uchiha Madara. After hearing this, Senju Hashirama looked at his brother, as if he were a stranger. "What's wrong with you? This is not your style. First you released the Uchiha clan members in advance, and then you proposed to vote for Madara. What exactly do you want to do?" Senju Tobirama's mind flashed through some of Chu Yang's words. He pulled the corners of his mouth unnaturally, squeezed out a smile that didn't look like a smile, and said, "I want to use this to repair the gap with the Uchiha clan. Although the Uchiha clan surrendered, their strength still exists. They are the most powerful clan besides the Senju clan. If the Uchiha clan cannot integrate into Konoha village, it will cause great trouble to the village in the future. Therefore, I want to repair the relationship with them as soon as possible and find a way to help them integrate into the village." After saying this, Senju Tobirama himself was almost moved, not to mention Senju Hashirama. He has been working hard for this, but not everyone can understand him. What other power can compare to the support of relatives? Tobirama, I'm glad you think so. Let's work hard together. Senju Hashirama patted his brother's shoulder happily, and his mental fatigue was swept away. The two brothers didn't know In fact, at this time, someone happened to hear their conversation outside the room. The person was Uchiha Madara. He originally came to Senju Hashirama for the selection of the first generation of Hokage, but he accidentally heard the conversation between the two. Uchiha Madara didn't expect that Senju Tobirama, who had always been hostile to the Uchiha clan, would be willing to do such a thing for them. As for Senju Tobirama, he mentioned that the Uchiha clan would cause trouble to Konoha in the future. In this regard, he, who was isolated by his clan members, suddenly felt that he could understand Senju Tobirama's thoughts. Some characteristics hidden in the Uchiha clan cannot be eradicated and will grow wildly in a certain period. For example, betrayal. Uchiha Madara, who was deeply shocked, went home and told his brother Uchiha Raizuna about this without hesitation. The latter was also shocked. Thinking of the change in Senju Tobirama's attitude before, he felt mixed emotions for a while. The next day, with the other families witnessing, the Senju brothers and the Uchiha brothers did something that shocked everyone. They voted for each other. Please read and recommend. Comments are also fine, brothers. Chapter 19. The arrangement is clear. Outrageous. Outrageous. The atmosphere at the voting site was so strange that it made people shudder. The representatives of the major families did not speak, but quietly looked at the four brothers standing together. The scene was magical. Even Chu Yang had goosebumps all over his body, fearing that his impulsive work would fail. Fortunately, the development of things did not exceed the trajectory of fate, but just a little deviation. Except for Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju, only a part of the people voted for Uchiha Madara. Those people were arranged by Tobirama Senju in advance. Everything was planned. Uchiha Madara was a little disappointed with the result. He knew that his reputation in the hearts of the people of Konoha village was not as good as Hashirama Senju, but he did not expect it to be so different. But he finally chose to accept it calmly, and even Uchiha Raizuna had no objection. Madara. Hashirama Senju looked at his friend with apology. It seemed that he was sorry for becoming Hokage. Feeling the sincere gaze of Senju Hashirama, Uchiha Madara sighed and said, Hashirama, this is a choice of everyone, including me. You don't need to feel guilty. I chose you because I believe you can achieve our ideal. At this point, Senju Hashirama no longer refused and gratefully followed his friend's instructions. Surrounded by the crowd, he announced that he would become the first generation Hokage of Konoha village. While many family representatives and people came forward to congratulate, Uchiha Raizuna slowly walked to Senju Tobirama and stood side by side with him. Now I can understand why my brother can be friends with him. Uchiha Raizuna said sincerely. Hokage-sama does have a special personality charm. I hope Konoha village can get better and better under his leadership. Senju Tobirama nodded and said, brother will not let anyone down. You can rest assured. Suddenly, Uchiha Raizuna made a move that Senju Tobirama did not expect. He extended his hand to Senju Tobirama and said with a smile, let's meet again, Uchiha clan, Uchiha Raizuna. Senju Tobirama was stunned for a moment, then looked at him deeply and extended his hand. Senju clan, Senju Tobirama. As representatives of the war faction of their respective families, the handshake between these two people was even more eye-catching than the handshake between Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara on the other side. Chu Yang, who was standing outside the crowd, watched this scene with interest, but suddenly felt the affirmative look from Senju Tobirama. It meant, boy, your conspiracy is quite useful. Chu Yang. Because of Chu Yang's promotion, the development trajectory of Konoha village was a little different from the original plot, and the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan also entered a development honeymoon period that was unheard of in history. As time passed, Konoha happened one after another, which was enough to affect the development of the entire village. The first thing was that under the leadership of Senju Tobirama, Konoha officially established the Anbu. Everyone thought that Senju Tobirama would naturally become the head of the Anbu, but no one expected that he would give this crucial position to Uchiha Raizuna. Senju Tobirama took a backseat and became the Hokage's assistant. Everyone thought that Senju Tobirama had made a sacrifice, including the Uchiha clan. It seemed that only Chu Yang knew what Senju Tobirama meant. First of all, the first priority of the Anbu organization is to protect the safety of the Hokage in secret, followed by the assassination tactics special forces, which are responsible for sniping important enemy figures. Reconnaissance of the enemy and prevention of foreign invasion during special periods are the lowest priority duties. Protecting the Hokage is the top priority. Apart from anything else, handing Senju Hashirama's safety to Uchiha Raizuna has already expressed Senju Tobirama's trust in the Uchiha clan. This can greatly gain the favor of the Uchiha clan and even Uchiha Raizuna himself. There is no doubt. Is there any risk in this decision? Of course there is. However, the risk is still within the scope that can be taken, because Uchiha Raizuna's strength is not enough to threaten Senju Hashirama. Even if he rebels, he can't hurt Senju Hashirama. Senju Tobirama has already considered this. Then, under Chu Yang's suggestion, Senju Tobirama himself plans to place a special team inside the Anbu to secretly monitor the actions of the entire Anbu. That is the route established by Shimura Danzo in the future. Based on these 2 points, Senju Tobirama will give the position of the head of the Anbu to Uchiha Raizuna. Of course, he will have other arrangements in the future to ensure that there is no mistake. What really makes Chu Yang feel wonderful is the position of the Hokage assistant. Who has more power, the Hokage assistant or the Anbu head? Most people will choose the Anbu head. Isn't the Hokage assistant just someone who runs errands for the Hokage? What power can he have? But don't forget that with Senju Hashirama's personality, he will definitely take all matters, big or small, on his brother Tobirama. And Senju Tobirama will become the actual controller of the power of the Hokage. Everyone thinks that Senju Tobirama sacrificed his deserved power for the peaceful and stable development of the village, but in fact, the power in his hands has not decreased at all, it is just hidden. Uchiha Madara may see the clues, but he will never think too much, because the Anbu with transcendent power is already in the hands of his younger brother Raizuna. Moreover, he knows Senju Hashirama very well, and knows that the other party cannot handle those headaches. The official business will definitely give power to his younger brother. After the problem of the Anbu is solved, the second thing is the establishment of the security department. It is still because of the Anbu that Senju Tobirama handed over half of the power of the security department to the Hyuga clan. As a large clan with power second only to the Senju clan and the Uchiha clan, the Hyuga clan has weight and reason to share a piece of the power cake. The security department, which should have been controlled by the Uchiha clan, has a force that can check and balance them. Even so, the Uchiha clan is still not at a loss, and Senju Tobirama also took the opportunity to win the hearts of the Hyuga clan. With this arrangement, the Uchiha clan gained a lot of benefits, but Uchiha Madara, as the clan leader, only got the status of a senior consultant without any practical benefits. The scary thing is that no one thinks there is a problem. Even the Uchiha clan has no objection. In addition to the above 2 major events, the third thing is of long-term significance to the development of Konoha village. The establishment of the Konoha ninja school. It is the common wish of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara to give children who have been devastated by war a place to grow up healthily, so that they can train and have the ability to protect themselves. Senju Tobirama, who is good at teaching young people ninjutsu, was also elected as the first principal of the school. As the first generation Hokage and Senju Tobirama's direct disciple, Chu Yang became the first teacher in the school. Chapter 20 Chu Yang of Hogwarts. Read more. I will definitely become a Hokage in the future. A Hokage like Hashirama. On the first day of enrollment in the ninja school, Chu Yang found a student yelling at the gate. Chu Yang didn't like teaching very much. First, he himself was a gifted person and didn't have the patience to teach ordinary people. Second, he hated naughty children, especially naughty children who were in an excited state. For example, the one who was yelling in front of him. Chu Yang walked up to the naughty child with a bad look, held his head, and said lightly, "This is a school, keep your voice down." Who knew that the naughty child had a bad temper, and he slapped Chu Yang's hand away, ran behind his father, and made faces at Chu Yang. Chu Yang. The ninja seemed to know who Chu Yang was, and smiled apologetically. "Lord Yang, I'm sorry, I didn't discipline my son well, please don't argue with him." Chu Yang asked with a surprised look, "Do you know me? What's your name?" "I'm Sarutobi Sasuke, and this is my son Sarutobi Hiruzen." Sarutobi Sasuke smiled and pushed Sarutobi Hiruzen out, then whispered, "This is the disciple of Lord Hokage. Don't you admire him very much? Why don't you say anything?" Sarutobi Hiruzen stared at Chu Yang with wide eyes. Chu Yang also stared at him with wide eyes, and the two looked at each other. Damn. This naughty kid is actually the third generation? Chu Yang was still in a state of confusion, and the young third generation opposite him said carelessly, "You are the disciple of Lord Hokage? You don't look very good." Chu Yang. Sarutobi Sasuke scratched his head awkwardly and laughed. Ha ha ha, Lord Yang, I'm sorry, this child probably hasn't woken up yet, and keeps talking nonsense. Chu Yang raised the corners of his mouth, and said with a fake smile, "It's okay, I'll take him in later, he will wake up soon." Sarutobi Hiruzen seemed to sense the ill intentions in Chu Yang's tone, and backed away desperately, hiding behind his father. However, the young and thin boy was still pushed to Chu Yang's side by his father. "Lord Yang, please take good care of Hiruzen. I have a mission, and I'm leaving first." After Sarutobi Sasuke gave the instructions, he lowered his head and said to Sarutobi Hiruzen, "Hiruzen, study ninjutsu well, and I'll pick you up after school." After that, Sarutobi Sasuke disappeared with a flash body technique. It seems that the mission is indeed very urgent. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked up at Chu Yang and stiffly showed a flattering smile. Chu Yang also smiled, but in Sarutobi Hiruzen's eyes, he smiled like a devil. Wow. Sarutobi Hiruzen, whose psychological defenses collapsed, couldn't help but burst into tears. Did I make the future third Hokage cry on the first day of school? Chu Yang slapped his forehead, looking like he had a headache. The beginning of the school year is very annoying, and the people who are annoyed are not only Chu Yang in the Naruto world, but also Chu Yang in the Harry Potter magic world. Chu Yang in the magic world was born in an orphanage in London. Before going to the Palace of Souls, Chu Yang had already received an admission letter from Hogwarts. Chu Yang has a certain talent for magic, but at that time, he was worried that he would not be able to deal with the crisis that would happen in the academy. It was okay in the first few years. Chu Yang believed that he could get by no matter what, but the problem was that, after entering the 4th grade, once the plot of the Goblet of Fire began, it meant that Voldemort would make a comeback. Chu Yang didn't think that he, a wizard apprentice from an orphanage, could survive the war that swept the wizarding world. Rather than taking such a big risk to go to Hogwarts, it would be better to be a muggle and live in peace. But now the situation has taken a turn for the better. His cheat has arrived. With the support of Chu Yang in the other 2 worlds, Chu Yang's confidence was full. So Chu Yang, whose soul returned to the real world, immediately took out the admission notice hidden under his pillow. Page 1. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, President of the International Confederation of Wizards, First Class Meritorious Knight of the Order of Merlin, Grand Master, Chief Wizard of the Wizengamot. Dear Mr. Chu Yang, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to study at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Enclosed is a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to start on September 1st. We will wait for your owl to bring your reply on July 31st. Vice Headmaster, female. Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall. Chu Yang began to write back to Hogwarts, explaining his situation in the orphanage. He needed a teacher or professor from the academy to help him. He couldn't find the way to Diagon Alley alone. The dedicated owl flew to the orphanage almost every day, because Chu Yang hadn't written back before. It was almost caught by the nuns to make soup for the children. After receiving the reply, the owl flapped its wings and flew high, disappearing into the sky in the blink of an eye. As long as it's not Snape, I can accept other professors. Chu Yang didn't hate Snape, but as a student, he would still keep his distance from Snape. Snape really looked like the dean of the teaching department who used a cane to beat people in his previous life. It would take some time for Hogwarts to send a professor after receiving his reply, so Chu Yang had to save some tuition for himself during this time. How to save? Of course, robbed houses. Robbed the rich to help the poor. This was London in the 1990s, and the dark corners of the alleys were full of idle hooligans. Chu Yang specifically targeted these people. If he was lucky, he could even run into a gangster transaction scene and make a fortune. In 2 days, Chu Yang collected all the tuition for the next 7 years. Hogwarts couldn't know about this, so Chu Yang had to pretend to be a poor student on the surface. On the evening of the 3rd day after the reply, Chu Yang's observation haki sensed a special aura so he packed his luggage and tiptoed out of the window. After standing in the yard and waiting for a while, a gentle voice suddenly came from behind Chu Yang. "Mr. Chu Yang, I'm glad to see that you've prepared in advance." Chu Yang turned around and saw a short and fat witch walking towards him with fluffy and messy hair, a heavy robe, and a pointed hat full of patches. Chu Yang nodded and asked, "Are you the professor at Hogwarts?" The fat witch smiled and said, "Hello, Mr. Chu Yang, I'm Pomona Sprout, the Dean of Hufflepuff House at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and the Professor of Herbology." Chu Yang bowed slightly and replied, "Hello, Professor Sprout." Sprout glanced at the orphanage behind Chu Yang and said softly, "In the nearly 1,000 years of history of Hogwarts, children born in orphanages rarely have the opportunity to study here. The last one was. I'll recommend it tomorrow. Brothers, you must follow it. If the trial recommendation doesn't work, there will be no recommendation. Thank you, brothers." Chapter 21 The Leaky Cauldron. At this point, Sprout's voice stopped abruptly. She smiled awkwardly and started to talk again. "In short, your situation is rather special, and you have Oriental ancestry. Principal Dumbledore should have come to communicate with you in person, but the principal is currently busy with other things, so." Chu Yang showed a lovely smile. "Nice to meet you, Professor Sprout." Sprout was very satisfied with Chu Yang's attitude and praised with a smile, "Ha, what a clever little cutie. No wonder you packed your luggage early and waited for me. You seem to have guessed how we would solve your dilemma, right?" Chu Yang pondered and said, "Maybe you can sponsor part of my tuition in advance, so that I can go to school to study, and then let me do some auxiliary work in school. Work study, right? Work study?" Sprout looked at Chu Yang in surprise and nodded repeatedly. "This term is very appropriate. We do intend to let you do something in school. Getting something for nothing is not the value advocated by Hogwarts." As if he was afraid that Chu Yang would feel pressured, Sprout explained, "The school will not arrange anything beyond your ability. At most, you can help me take care of the herb garden, or after you become familiar with potions, help Professor Snape who teaches potions." When Chu Yang heard that he had to help Snape, he refused in his heart, but he still said, "Professor Sprout, I will complete these tasks seriously." "Of course," Sprout said loudly. Then he bent down and patted Chu Yang's head. "Wait here for a while. I have to explain the situation to the dean who is taking care of you, so as to avoid any unnecessary misunderstandings." After that, Sprout walked straight to the orphanage. He took out his wand and waved it gently at the side door. "Allow open." Unlocking spell. With a click, the side door slowly opened, and Sprout raised his head and chest and walked in like a proud swan under Chu Yang's admiring eyes. Chu Yang smacked his lips and said, "The reason I sneaked out is because Dean Anna is not easy to talk to. The old nun is extremely stubborn. I hope Professor Sprout will not be regarded as a weird person." Not long after, Professor Sprout walked out in a mess, with her hands on her head, protecting her patched pointed hat. "Do nuns in the Muggle world like to hold a broom when they sleep?" Sprout complained. "I was swept out by her broom before I could cast any magic." Chu Yang said embarrassedly, "I'm sorry, Professor. I should have reminded you that Dean Anna will be a little wary in order to protect the children in the orphanage." Sprout sighed. "I can understand. I'm protecting my students in the same way. Although the process was a bit tortuous, I still explained it clearly to her. You can go to Hogwarts with me without worry." Chu Yang pretended to be a child who had never seen the world and asked excitedly, "Are we going now?" Sprout pressed his hands down slightly, signaling Chu Yang not to be so excited. "It's late now. We have to stay at the Leaky Cauldron for one night. Tomorrow we will go to Diagon Alley to help you buy the things you need for school." Chu Yang blinked and asked, "Is it those things written on the admission notice?" "Close your eyes. You might feel a little uncomfortable next." Sprout nodded, then took Chu Yang's hand and prepared to cast apparition. Instantly, Chu Yang felt the surge of magic power, and a strong pressure was squeezing Chu Yang's body. Then, he felt like he was put into a can, being shaken up and down, and left and right at will. Fortunately, Chu Yang had an extremely tough physique and a strong mental strength beyond ordinary people at this time. After arriving at the destination, he did not show any discomfort. Few people can be so calm after the first contact with apparition. You have excellent talent and psychological quality, Mr. Chu Yang. Sprout, who saw Chu Yang's performance, expressed her praise generously. Although she had not been together for a long time, she was impressed by the child in front of her. Having a mature reason beyond his peers is a necessary condition for becoming a great wizard. Where is this? Chu Yang looked around. He found himself in a quiet street. Because it was late, there were no passers-by around. Charing Cross Street. Opposite is the leaky cauldron I mentioned. Sprout pointed to a very old-style store across the street. The dusty wooden door was so out of tune with everything around. Occasionally, someone would pass by and not notice the sign here, as if they had not seen it at all. This place is under a spell. Muggles, ordinary people cannot see the existence of the leaky cauldron, and the same is true for Hogwarts. Sprout explained as he took Chu Yang into the bar. The view in the bar was also dim. It was no different from the outside, with only a few candles shining firmly. An old man stood at the bar and nodded to Sprout. "Hello, Professor Sprout." "Hello, Mr. Tom." Sprout took Chu Yang to the bar. Chu Yang's eyes stayed on the moving newspapers, soup spoons, and the rag in front of Mr. Tom that would clean himself. Although Chu Yang was mentally prepared, he was still surprised by the magic of the magic world after seeing it with his own eyes. "Haha, is it the new little wizard?" Old Tom smiled knowingly when he saw Chu Yang's curious expression. "Yes, Mr. Tom." Chu Yang smiled and greeted the other party. Old Tom reminded, "It's the beginning of the school year now. There are many new students, like you living in the leaky cauldron. If you meet in the hall, you might as well make friends in advance. You know, no matter where you are, it's always good to have more friends." Chu Yang replied gratefully, "Thank you for your advice, Mr. Tom." "Okay, Mr. Tom, let's stop chatting here. I have to take this kid upstairs to rest. There are still a lot of things waiting for him tomorrow." After Sprout took the keys from old Tom, he took Chu Yang upstairs. Late at night, Chu Yang fell asleep with the excitement and curiosity about the magical world. Early the next morning, a heavy knock on the door woke Chu Yang from the quilt. "Chu Yang, we should go out. Get up quickly." Sprout's voice sounded outside the door, as loud as a bell, even louder than the alarm clock. "Okay, Professor Sprout, I'll get up right away." Chu Yang got dressed quickly and was about to brush his teeth when he suddenly realized that he had forgotten to bring toothpaste and toothbrush. "Why do I always forget to bring my toiletries every time I go out? Can't I change this bad habit from my last life in this one?" Chu Yang looked at himself in the mirror speechlessly. After packing up his things, he opened the door and met Professor Sprout. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, heading to Diagon Alley, seeking follow-up reading. Haha, you have a messy hair. You should pay attention to your image when you go out, Chu Yang. Sprout waved the wand in his hand and combed Chu Yang's messy hair. "You didn't give me time to tidy it up, Professor." Chu Yang shrugged and defended innocently. "Hurry up and go downstairs for breakfast. We have a lot of things to buy today." Sprout turned and went downstairs. Her heavy body made a tooth grinding sound when stepping on the wooden stairwell. Chu Yang followed behind her, keeping a certain distance, for fear that she would break the stairs with one foot. Bread, jam, milk, sausage, a very classic 4-piece set. The breakfast provided by the leaky cauldron was not delicious. At most, it was just enough to fill the stomach, but Chu Yang still ate all the food in the bowl. Children from orphanages never waste food. After the two finished eating, they left the leaky cauldron from the back door. After a few steps, they were blocked by a wall. Chu Yang was a little excited. He knew that the other side of the wall was Diagon Alley, symbolizing the real magical world. The third brick above the trash can. Count 2 bricks to the side, remember, then knock 3 times, and the passage to Diagon Alley will open. Sprout took out his wand and tapped the bricks 3 times. The wall in front of him seemed to come alive, turning to both sides, and a mysterious world unfolded in front of Chu Yang. Sprout walked in front and led the way. Then he introduced everything about this alley to Chu Yang. In addition to the entrance at the back door of the leaky cauldron, there are 2 other ways to reach Diagon Alley. One is the apparition I performed earlier, and the other is flu powder. But the casting requirements of apparition are very high, and it is difficult for ordinary wizards to master it. Generally, only professor level wizards like me can perform it calmly. The use of flu powder is relatively simple, and the price is not expensive. 2 silver sickles for a spoonful. It is the first choice for many wizarding families. Sprout pointed to the fireplaces on both sides of the street and explained, flu powder will only take effect if it is connected to the flu network. It is very simple to use. Just hold a handful of flu powder, stand in the fireplace, clearly say the place name, and then sprinkle the flu powder. At this point, Sprout suddenly turned around, looked at Chu Yang seriously and said, remember, when you say the place name, you must pronounce it clearly, otherwise, the consequences will be serious, understand? Chu Yang replied, saying the wrong name will teleport people to a strange place, right? Not only that, some people teleported themselves into the wall and died on the spot because they said the wrong place name. Sprout sighed, I don't want to see your name on the list of accidental casualties, Chu Yang. Hearing this, Chu Yang nodded silently. Afterwards, Sprout took Chu Yang to a robe shop and tailored 3 sets of robes, a peaked hat, protective gloves, and a winter cloak for Chu Yang. There was also a cauldron for potion class. Chu Yang chose an owl as his pet. He could only choose an owl. Who would choose a toad or a mouse? This is what Sprout does every year. He is familiar with it and prepared most of the necessary supplies in a blink of an eye. All expenses are borne by Hogwarts. Now only the wand is left. Sprout and Chu Yang came to a wand shop that looked very old. Ollivander. Welcome, Professor Sprout. Chestnut, unicorn hair, 10 2/3 inches long. You look tired. Did you just come back from somewhere? The old man with the same hairstyle as Einstein came down the slide and finally crossed the wand boxes piled everywhere to Sprout. Sprout smiled and responded, hello, Mr. Ollivander, your memory is still as good as ever. Of course, I remember every wand and its owner I sold. Ollivander raised his head proudly, then glanced at Chu Yang. Is this little wizard here to buy a wand? Sprout explained, he is a freshman at Hogwarts this year. Congratulations on entering Hogwarts. It is the best school in the world. Believe me, you will have a bright future in the future. Ollivander blinked, then waved his wand and said, let me measure your body first. Please don't move. Then, a set of measuring tools began to wander on the surface of Chu Yang's body under the control of Ollivander's magic. To be honest, Chu Yang didn't understand what the relationship was between choosing a wand and physical examination. Even the distance between the eyes and nose had to be measured. Each wand is unique. Its characteristics depend on the tree from which the wand's wood comes, and the magical biological characteristics of the wand core. In addition, after each wand finds its ideal owner, it begins to impart its own characteristics to the owner, and learn the characteristics of the holder. The wand and the user complement each other. Wands made of the same material will grow into wands with completely different characteristics, after meeting completely different owners. While speaking, Ollivander had completed Chu Yang's measurement, and began to look for a suitable wand for him. Which hand is your dominant hand? Right hand. Ollivander leaned over, and rummaged through the pile of wand boxes for a while, and finally took out a dusty wand box, handed it to Chu Yang, and blew it gently. Cough cough cough. Chu Yang coughed, while taking the wand box from Ollivander, and pulling out the wand inside. Aspen wood, dragon heartstring, 10 inches. Hold it in your hand and wave it gently. Remember, be gentle. Listening to Ollivander's instructions, Chu Yang gently waved the wand in his hand, and an invisible impact spread out, directly overturning the container behind Ollivander. Sprout stepped back a few steps, stood at the door of the wand shop, covered his chest and let out a long breath. Ollivander was frightened, and he didn't forget to complain, very powerful magic young man, but it's not suitable for you. Sorry, Mr. Ollivander. Chu Yang quickly changed the wand back. He was shocked by the movement just now. He forgot that, because of the existence of the Soul Palace, his talents in all aspects are far superior to ordinary people. It's okay, Kit, this kind of thing happens from time to time, although it's rare to see such a big commotion like yours. Lavender turned around and started looking through the shelves again, muttering, maybe it's because you have Oriental ancestry. I have to find you some ones from my hometown. Generally speaking, there are 3 kinds of materials that Lavender uses to make wand cores: phoenix tail feathers, unicorn hair, and dragon heartstrings. It's not that there are no other materials, but Lavender only uses superior materials. This is his rule for making wands. Therefore, in addition to the 3 commonly used materials, Lavender will also try to find some rarer materials to make wands. Finally, Lavender took out another dusty wand box, or 1,000 words in one sentence. Please read it again, and recommend it to me, brothers! Exclamation mark. Chapter 23 Unprecedented Natural Magic. New book list extra update. Red oak, bloody unicorn scales, 9 inches long. I found many owners for it, but all failed. The little guy is very picky. Lavender was talking, and felt Chu Yang's strange gaze. He was old and wise, and he quickly explained, please believe me, this is not a scale dropped by humans. It will be cursed to hurt a sacred magical creature like a unicorn. Chu Yang retracted his scrutiny. He took the wand box from Lavender, and pulled out the wand. Be gentle this time. Lavender reminded urgently, don't overturn my counter. Don't worry, I will be gentle this time. Chu Yang nodded heavily, and waved the wand carefully. As a result, the whole wand shop began to shake violently. Lavender and Sprout looked around in horror, fearing that the wand shop would collapse. The beams and pillars in the shop, even the door frames, all wooden things seemed to have life, growing wildly, expanding continuously, and even affecting the surrounding shops. The trees were rejuvenated again, and green vines and vegetation were also extending. The flower buds also grew out, and in the blink of an eye, they grew into a bright sea of flowers. The dead wood turned into old wood that had lived for hundreds of years in an instant, full of life. The crazy scene attracted people on both sides of the street, and there were bursts of exclamations from the crowd. Sprout's eyes widened. As a professor of herbology, it was difficult for her to understand what was happening in front of her. The powerful natural magic just now came from Chu Yang. At this moment, the red oak wand with unicorn scales as the core was emitting a warm red light that enveloped Chu Yang. This was the characteristic of the wand recognizing its master. Lavender looked at this scene in shock. He originally just wanted to give it a try, but he didn't expect it to really work. Chu Yang looked at the shops around him that were destroyed beyond recognition by him and didn't care about the natural magic at all. He smiled bitterly and said, I will compensate for all your losses, Mr. Lavender. No, child. Lavender stroked the trees that were growing wildly in the store. His eyes lit up. These trees contain powerful vitality and are excellent materials for making wands. These alone are enough. Lavender pointed to the shop next to him that was damaged by the trees and smiled. It's enough to compensate for their losses. Chu Yang breathed a sigh of relief, then took out the wand and asked, how many gold galleons does this wand cost? Lavender smiled and said, this wand is enough. Take it. If it is damaged, bring it to me, and I will repair it for you for free. Chu Yang nodded in surprise. Thank you, Mr. Lavender. Sprout on the side walked to Chu Yang eagerly, looking him up and down with unbelievable eyes. The strength of the magic just now was already higher than that of most adult wizards, but it was caused by an 11-year-old boy. But that's not the most important thing. What shocked Sprout the most was that she had never seen anyone's magic carry such amazing vitality, so rich that people could feel the power of nature so realistically. Even Sprout's own carefully cared herb garden could not give her such a feeling. Not to mention Sprout, Chu Yang himself was also shocked. He actually guessed that his magic would be a little stronger than that of ordinary wizards. After all, he was a person with plugins, but he did not expect that his magic would show such strange characteristics. After thinking about it, the only possible connection was the wood escape inherited from the Hokage Chu Yang. Everyone's physique will cause magic to be different from others. The power of bloodline limit, which is deep in the blood, will have a greater impact on magic. Now it seems that this is the only explanation. Sprout looked at Chu Yang, who was bewildered, with a lot of questions rushing to his mouth, but unable to speak. He is just a child. What can he know? It is better to go back to school and ask the knowledgeable Dumbledore. Noticing that more and more people were watching outside, Sprout protected Chu Yang behind him and hurriedly took him out of the one shop. In the crowd, a little girl watched Chu Yang's back as he left, her eyes full of curiosity, until the adults around her reminded her. She regretfully withdrew her gaze. Sprout took Chu Yang back to the leaky cauldron in a hurry. Sprout was busy telling Dumbledore about Chu Yang's strangeness. Chu Yang, I'm sorry, but I have to go first. Here are your tickets and living expenses. Keep them safe. I've already paid for the accommodation. You can stay here until school starts. Remember to get on the train before 11 o'clock on September 1st. Sprout put a ticket and a bag of gold galleons into Chu Yang's hand, and then he couldn't wait to use apparition, and suddenly disappeared in front of Chu Yang. Chu Yang didn't even have time to say a word during the whole process. Professor Sprout, you are really impatient. Chu Yang complained helplessly, then looked down at the ticket. King's Cross Station, platform 9 3/4. It's a familiar place name. Fortunately I know how to get there, otherwise it would be troublesome. Crossing the platform is a classic scene in Harry Potter, and Chu Yang remembers it very clearly. After Sprout left, Chu Yang went to Gringotts. He wanted to exchange the pounds he had earned from the gangsters for gold galleons. When he went there, he found out that there were restrictions on exchanging pounds for gold galleons. Chu Yang, who thought he was going to make a fortune, could only exchange 200 gold galleons in disappointment. So, robbing gangsters is not good enough. It's better to change the target to dark wizards. Chu Yang's eyes flashed with a dangerous light. After making a big mistake, his mood was extremely bad. After running around outside for a day, Chu Yang was too lazy to move. When he returned to his room, Chu Yang sat on the bed and picked up the books he had just bought and started reading. He would spend this period of time with these books until the beginning of school. The first book Chu Yang chose was A History of Magic written by Emery Switch. This is also the best reading material for people who have never been exposed to the magic world to understand this world. Because he shared the talents of 3 of his own, Chu Yang's memory is very outstanding. Although he has not yet reached the level of photographic memory, he can completely remember and understand the knowledge in the book after reading it 2 or 3 times. Some people can remember quickly, but they may not be able to understand. But as long as Chu Yang remembers, he can basically understand it completely. Being able to quickly memorize and understand the knowledge in books is a very pleasant experience, which is more pleasant than any other behavior in the world that stimulates the brain to get pleasure. Brothers, today I will rush to the new book list, add 1 chapter, ask for recommendation votes, and ask for the bottom of the overall list. Please, follow up, invest, and recommend votes. Chapter 24, Dark Wizard's Suffering Day. It is not only the happiness on the biological level, but also the happiness on the spiritual level. Especially before going to the Soul Palace, Chu Yang was still an ordinary person. In contrast, he could better understand this indescribable pleasure. It is like playing a game. You fight a monster with high benefits, but the damage is very scraping. When you come back with a hack, you can kill it 999 seconds directly. That feeling is simply wonderful. Chu Yang is in this state now. He doesn't want to interrupt, so he took out books from his backpack and continued to read. It was not until dinner time that Chu Yang's stomach growled, and he reluctantly put down the books in his hands. In just a short while, Chu Yang had finished reading 3 popular science books, A History of Magic, or 1000 Magical Herbs and Mushrooms, and Fantastic Beasts, and Where to Find Them. Chu Yang stretched his waist and felt a tingling sensation all over his body. He murmured, if I could read books like this in my previous life, I would probably be admitted to a world-renowned university in a year or 2, right? After going downstairs and having dinner in a hurry, Chu Yang hurriedly prepared to go back to his room. Hey, slow down, little wizard who is about to enter school. Why are you in such a hurry? Old Tom raised his head to remind Chu Yang, who was walking on the stairwell. Excuse me, Mr. Tom, I'm busy going back to read. Chu Yang replied, then walked back to the room with light footsteps. You are really studious. Tom was stunned for a moment. In his impression, little wizards who came to Diagon Alley for the first time would basically be lost in the wonderful magic world outside, and few people could calm down and read books here. Chu Yang returned to the room, First let the owl out to feed it, and then couldn't wait to take out magic theory to read. Compared with popular science books, the reading threshold of magic theory is much higher, and the time required for Chu Yang to understand and remember it has also increased a lot. It was not until the sky darkened that Chu Yang, who was slightly exhausted, put down the book and fell asleep. The next day, Chu Yang, like yesterday, stayed in the room to read Magic Theory and Dark Power Self-Defense Guide, which is often called Defense Against the Dark Arts. He read the two books back and forth more than 10 times. In the evening, Chu Yang left the leaky cauldron wearing a hoodie and a wizard robe. He was going to hunt in Nocturne Alley tonight. Nocturne Alley and Diagon Alley are connected by a hidden alley. Few people would go back and forth along this road because there were too many people with bad intentions watching them. In wizard families, parents would warn their children not to go to Nocturne Alley when they were very young, as it was a gathering place for dark wizards. If there was something urgent, adult wizards would usually use flu powder to quickly travel back and forth between Nocturne Alley, and those with stronger strength would choose apparition. If Chu Yang was just doing something, he would also choose flu powder, but he was here to hunt today. The more greedy people were eyeing him, the better. Defense against the dark arts allowed Chu Yang to clearly know the spells and starting moves of dark wizards when they cast dark magic, which is also called casting pre-swing. The observation haki can help Chu Yang predict the opponent's actions and avoid them in advance. With Chu Yang's current physical condition, even if he doesn't use the instant body technique in the Naruto world, most black wizards will find it difficult to hit him. This is Chu Yang's confidence in hunting black wizards. An 11-year-old child swaggered through the streets connected to Nocturne Alley, and as expected, attracted a lot of attention. Chu Yang deliberately dropped his money bag on the ground, and several gold galleons rolled out of the bag with a clanging sound. Several pale and skinny black wizards almost popped their eyes. Chu Yang hurriedly picked up the gold galleons. Facing the greedy eyes around him, he panicked and ran into an alley. Immediately, a black wizard followed Chu Yang, and followed him into the pitch black alley, laughing sinisterly. Chu Yang screamed and ran faster. "Little wizard, didn't your parents tell you where you can't go in Diagon Alley?" A bald wizard with sunken eyes and a fierce look chased after Chu Yang and laughed. At the entrance of the alley, a group of black wizards were standing guard outside. When they heard the bald wizard's rampant laughter, they also smiled. But not long after, the alley suddenly became quiet again. After a long time, there was no sound, as if no one had ever entered. Looking at the dark intersection, the black wizards looked at each other in bewilderment. It stands to reason that it wouldn't take so long to deal with a child. Who's going in to take a look? York, why don't you go in and take a look? Are you afraid of the dark? Ha 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 ha. Amid the laughter of a group of black wizards, York, who looked sickly, suddenly became angry and said, "Go if you want to, shut up." After that, he walked in tremblingly, holding onto the wall. The laughter behind him suddenly broke out after a brief pause. Ha 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 ha. York, you walk like a woman. York cast an illumination spell to dispel the darkness around him and walked in with big strides. As a result, he seemed to be tripped by something and stumbled to the ground. The ground beneath his butt was as soft as a cushion. He looked down and saw the bald wizard who had chased Chu Yang before. York's pupils shrank suddenly. He looked around and saw a large group of people lying on the ground. The dark wizards on the ground were not dead, but they had been stripped of their robes and only had a wizard's robe left. York was so scared that he sat on the ground and howled at the top of his voice. The dark wizards outside poured into the dark and narrow alley and were also shocked by the scene in front of them. At this time, Chu Yang had already left Nocturne Alley and returned to the leaky cauldron. He poured all his gains on the bed, and the sound of coins hitting each other was like a wonderful orchestral concert. There were 3 different currencies: gold galleons, silver sickles, and copper nuts. He earned nearly 1,000 gold galleons on this trip. The life of dark wizards is not easy either. Their richest days should be the time when Voldemort was the most powerful. It's a pity that things are different now. Chu Yang felt a little regretful, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. He did not use any magic during the whole process, so naturally no one would notice him. With a way to make money, Chu Yang had no worries about spending money. He first went to Flourish and Blots to buy some textbooks for senior grades, and then stayed in his room to read. In the next month, Chu Yang's life was very regular. He read during the day and changed into different appearances at night to go out to work. He could be called the Batman active in the dark night of Nocturne Alley. The carefree days passed by in a flash, and time soon came to September 1st. Chu Yang packed his luggage, left the Leaky Cauldron, and headed for King's Cross Station. The area near platform 9 3/4 was cast a spell, and muggles could not detect it, and would unconsciously bypass it, just like the Leaky Cauldron. Chapter 25 Encounter. Chu Yang activated his observation haki, and heard a voice cursing muggle clearly. Chu Yang followed the direction of the voice, and quickly found the target. At this moment, a boy wearing glasses hurriedly passed by Chu Yang. He was pushing a bag like Chu Yang, and there was also an owl on the bag. The boy looked around blankly, as if he didn't know where to go. Chu Yang looked at him and asked inexplicably, "Are you also looking for platform 9 3/4?" The boy with glasses turned around suddenly, with a look of surprise and relief on his face. "You too?" "Yes. Come with me." Chu Yang took the lead, and walked in front, and the boy with glasses followed closely behind. "Are you also a freshman going to Hogwarts?" The boy with glasses saw that Chu Yang was about the same age as him, and he immediately became active and smiled. "Hello, my name is Harry Potter. What's your name?" "Harry Potter?" Chu Yang finally knew why he had spoken to the other person on a whim. The boy in front of him, who had an inexplicable sense of familiarity, was actually Harry Potter. "My name is Chu Yang. You can call me Yang." In English, words like yang and yang can be read as young. Yang. Harry smiled and asked curiously, "Are you from the ancient Eastern country? Does Hogwarts also accept students from there?" "In terms of blood, I'm indeed from there." Chu Yang shrugged and said, "But I grew up in an orphanage in London." "Oh, sorry." Harry felt that he had offended Chu Yang and apologized quickly. Chu Yang waved his hand generously and said nonchalantly, "It doesn't matter. In fact, the orphanage is not as bad as you think. I have many friends there, and Nana is a nun. She is very kind and treats children very well. Of course, that is based on the fact that we don't get into trouble." Feeling the sincerity in Chu Yang's words, Harry also showed a look of yearning. "Hearing you say that, I think it should be very interesting there." Suddenly, Harry became a little depressed and lost. "In fact, I'm also an orphan, but I don't have any friends." Perhaps because both of them were orphans, Harry naturally confided to Chu Yang about his experiences over the years. Chu Yang patted his shoulder and encouraged him. "The moment you board the train to Hogwarts, it means that you have said goodbye to the past. Don't worry, you will make many new friends in school." Harry immediately felt much more comfortable. At the same time, he was eager to enter Hogwarts as soon as possible. "This is platform 9 3/4. Chu Yang pointed to a wall in the middle of the platform in front and explained, "It is cursed there. We have to go through it." "Go through it?" Harry's eyes widened. Then he watched Chu Yang push the luggage towards the wall. Just when Harry was about to shout out in nervousness, he saw Chu Yang's figure sink into the wall and disappear without a trace. "Chu Yang?" Harry shouted softly, but there was no response. He then took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and pushed the luggage in one breath. After a short period of darkness, Harry's eyes changed, and a brand new platform appeared in front of him. The sign above his head read platform 9 3/4. "Hurry up, the train is about to leave." Chu Yang's urging voice reached Harry's ears. He trembled all over and hurriedly pushed his luggage to follow. After getting on the train, Chu Yang and Harry found a compartment to sit down. Both of them were not short of money, so the snack cart was swept clean as soon as it came. Chu Yang paid the most, and in order to take care of Harry's self-esteem, he asked him to pay a small part. The seats were full of snacks. Chu Yang and Harry were picking and choosing. Harry was just curious about these things he had never seen before, and felt that each one was full of the mystery of magic. Chu Yang was just a simple foodie. Compared with the dazzling packaging decorated with magic outside, he wanted to know what the snacks inside tasted like. The two chatted quickly about family. After learning that Chu Yang was an orphan like himself, Harry felt an inexplicable sense of intimacy in his heart. Harry looked at Chu Yang with more sympathy and heartache, as if he saw his former self. The bad mood was quickly suppressed by the vision of the future. Not long after they finished eating, a somewhat sloppy boy stood in the aisle outside. His clothes were a bit old and his face was dirty. Harry handed the boy a bag of snacks and invited him to sit in the box. Harry's enthusiasm made the boy very happy, and the embarrassment in his heart disappeared. The boy took the snacks handed to him by Harry, ate them, and introduced himself. "Hello, my name is Ron Weasley." Harry smiled and said, "Hello, my name is Harry Potter." Ron's eyes widened and asked in shock, "Are you the famous Harry Potter?" Harry scratched his head a little embarrassedly and said, "If there is no second Potter, it should be me, right? Then do you have that one? I mean the one in the rumor." Ron pointed to his forehead and looked at Harry with eager eyes. Harry smiled shyly, then lifted his bangs to reveal the lightning scar on his forehead. "Cool," Ron shouted excitedly. Then he fixed his eyes on Chu Yang's face and asked in surprise, "Brother, are you from the ancient country in the east?" Chu Yang had already guessed his identity, so he simply nodded as a greeting and lowered his head to flip through Practical Defense of Dark Magic. This book can be regarded as an advanced version of Dark Power Self-Defense Guide, which is only read by senior students. It contains a lot of knowledge about dark creatures, which is exactly what Chu Yang needs. If the time is right, Chu Yang will definitely go to the Forbidden Forest for a walk. As for those textbooks for lower grades, Chu Yang has memorized them by heart and occasionally takes them out to review. Chu Yang was enjoying the pleasure brought by reading, but at this time, Ron was a little unhappy. He had greeted him so enthusiastically just now, but Chu Yang just nodded casually. Ron didn't know how familiar Chu Yang was with him, so familiar that he subconsciously didn't greet him. To Ron, who didn't like studying, Chu Yang's unusual speed of flipping through the books didn't seem like studying at all, but more like pretending. Ron raised the snacks and shook them in front of Chu Yang, saying with a smile, "Hey, buddy, there's no teacher here, don't pretend. Take a break, and when you get to school, read the book seriously, so that the principal and teachers will know." Chu Yang knew he had misunderstood. Most people would misunderstand this scene. So, Chu Yang just looked up and smiled, without any explanation, and continued to read the book in his hand. "Brothers, I'm at the end of the overall list. Thank you all. I really couldn't have made it without you. The following plot will definitely make everyone enjoy it. Thank you. Please support me in every way." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.